we'll be talking to no one for the first bit. I believe we're live. This is how every Google Hangout starts. Is I think we're live. I heard a bing. I think we're live. Live with 0 viewers at this point. But for those who are watching this subsequently, as it's posted to YouTube, I think maybe we'll start the Hangout with Trey and I sort of nostalgically and wistfully remembering the days of email versus chat. You know, where things were really clear. I know I struggle with. We were starting a few minutes late here. I struggle with this business of when you make a post on Google+, it's sometimes public, but you can make it private, or when you're replying that it's a comment, and it also shows up on YouTube. And we had briefly had a heck of a time trying to figure out, like, I don't want to post the link, you know, privately on, publicly on somebody else's comment section, and then so we finally got that worked out, and Trey has joined us. So
yeah, I have a hard time. I still don't know how it goes with Google Plus and with YouTube, and it's very confusing for me. So I'm still a novice, and I've been doing it for quite a while. So anyway,
I can't believe I just did the Hangout newbie gaffe here too. I did make a point. You know, I opened a window so I could see the video feed, so I know when we're live and how it's looking and how our sound is, and then I muted that window because everybody, I'm looking at you, JD Kane, forgets to do that. But it turns out I'd done it twice and only muted one of the 2 windows. So I was just getting the sound back from my headphones there. Well, so for the audience interest, I mean, we are picking up some viewers, and I see some comments coming in. This is gonna be a fairly fast-paced one. This is gonna be a little different than the Hangout. So I'm gonna first we'll do a little bit of introduction for the people, because actually Trey and I don't know each other. We'll start there. So the introduction is mostly for our benefit, and if the audience gets to know us, well, that's great too. And it's going to proceed pretty briskly because I had some parenting things to do leading up to the Hangout, and Trey has some stuff to do afterwards. So we're looking at about a half hour to 40 minutes or so of Trey and I talking, and then we'll open it up for. I mean, we'll be watching the Q&A and the comments, but mostly he and I talking. And after that, I'll throw the link down in the comment section. You guys are welcome to join. I don't think that Trey's going to be able to join us for very long for that part of it, but here we are. It's Saturday. What do you want to do? So, Trey, and so your last name is Jadlow. Am I pronouncing that correctly, or is it foreign in the
That's
J?
right.
It is? Okay. Well,
I think it's kind of French. It comes from Jadot, I think, and it morphed in what was Jedot. And then my great-grandfather got tired of being called Jadlot when it's pronounced Jadlow, and changed it to a W.
Oh, and changed it, yeah. Yeah, generally here, if the words ending in LOT, we don't really have that much of a problem. So I'll do a really quick introduction, again, mostly for your benefit. And the meager audience will pick up today, which actually is jumping up quite a bit. Most of them will have at least seen my mug on Hangouts before. I've been doing counter-apologetics as sort of a keyboard hero, as my good friend Veckel puts it, for probably since the mid-'90s. And then in the kind of in the dawning of the era of YouTube and creationism started to really pop up, I got really involved in the more sort of pro-science, not so much counter-apologetics, but really about sort of addressing creationist issues as a platform for bringing forward science education, because there's a lot of stuff that people wouldn't find interesting in science, but when you get to sort of incorporate it as part of Ponage of Venom Fang X or the Atheist Antidote, well, then that was suddenly a very watchable thing for people, so that was kind of fun. Since the Google Plus thing has really sort of jumped off, actually a little before that was when I was first brought in to the Magic Sandwich Show, which I'm assuming, Trey, you are not a regular viewer, probably not even seen it.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. Well, I've been, I mean, they've been broadcasting, I think, 3 years now, maybe 4, and I've been, semi-regular, like an alternate, and then now regular for a little, semi-regular for about almost 2 years now, but definitely more than a year as a regular. And it's fairly well attended. I mean, it's a fairly small community. When we talk about, oh, so-and-so has like thousands of views or whatever, well, you know what, this is a very small corner of YouTube. I'll say Magic Sandwich Show is a fairly well-watched, well-attended sort of pro-science. People call it an atheist show. That's not really the intent of it, but we end up getting into that. But in terms of its popularity on YouTube, we're not like, cats failing to jump from one thing to another. I mean, those things get a lot more views than we get. So, I don't know that there's much more that I can sort of share about myself that sort of helps you sort of tailor what you want to say here. But is there something you can say, introduction, in terms of sort of what you see yourself to be doing on YouTube, and you've been doing a lot of Hangouts. You've sort of really arced lately in the last couple of months, really. With I see challenges pending, challenges from you, challenges to you. What are you thinking about? How's Google helping you? Google Plus, how is it helping you helping you in your quest to make the world a better place?
Sure. Well, thank you. First of all, it's nice to meet you, HogTie. It seemed like a nice guy, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to interact with you. I have to turn off my camera because my internet is bad, so hopefully this will be good enough to be able to continue on. I mean, I don't see myself as someone who's out to do any great things other than just be who I am and interact with my neighbor, and love my neighbor as myself. And I'm very much a pedestrian person, and so far as education comes, I don't have really any formal education. I'm just interested about things. I'm kind of fascinated with issues of ultimacy, and so in those issues I've put some energy in and want to know and learn more than anything for myself. I want to find out what's true, and I want to live that which corresponds to reality. And in doing so, I come to some conclusions. And so I'm rather passionate about my views, but not because I'm wanting to shill for Christianity or for God or anything like that. It's just I'm convinced it's true. And so in that vein, I have an endeavor to find what is true and to care enough about my neighbor in order to interact with them. So I'm not interested in making a big YouTube channel or starting a show, or it seems to me like there's an awful lot of that type of stuff on YouTube. I consider myself to be somewhat outside of the community. I don't know if anybody offended this, but it seems like the whole great debate is somewhat like a soap opera, and there's a lot of hate that goes on in that group, and I don't like it. I don't want to be a part of the soap opera, but I do enjoy interacting with the people, and so I'm not a, and I don't know what the future holds, but I'm not a part of the permanent furniture of this house that we have. I'm very ignorant about a lot of the people and stuff and what goes on. But anyway, I'm grateful for the opportunity to give my 2 cents and to have some interaction and discuss these things. I very much enjoy thoughtful conversation, and I'm grateful for this opportunity.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And there are a couple of things that I had to chuckle at there. I think were very good points. For one, about the Great Debate community, I think I know the history of the term the Great Debate as much as it's been applied in this community, and I think there's a sarcastic, it was sort of instantiated sarcastically, and then the term itself was taken off, and knowing the person, I believe the one who uttered it sarcastically initially, I think he might sort of be amused that people still call it that. The thing that sort of, and then also you're saying, well, there's a lot of soap opera stuff, and that's human beings get together and they do a bunch of silly stuff, and I have to admit a fondness for watching it. I think it's interesting when people are bickering, and as long as it doesn't get too vile or interfere with people's personal lives. One thing I find interesting about the bit of time, and I'm fairly busy, so I don't necessarily get to be as good of a consumer of YouTube or Google Plus material as I'd like to be, but I did listen with interest to your second discussion with Alex Botten, and I've seen some of your comments and whatnot, and I do have some links for some other things that you've done, and other Hangouts and whatnot. So I'm interested in looking at that stuff. But you'll say, what I find interesting is you'll be talking about your actual argument, and then someone will say, yeah, well, G-Man says blah blah blah, and you'll say, yeah, I don't even know who G-Man is. And that cracks me up because the guy's fairly well known. I mean, he's not necessarily big guns, but he's when people in this community are talking about things that go on in this so-called community, and we say, oh well, G-Man did whatever. It would be like if you lived in an apartment complex and like in the courtyard, oh, G-Man, he's the guy that lives in building C, who does the thing with the thing, always wearing the hats with the puffy paint. You know who I'm talking about. It's a little weird when somebody's in here and is actively engaging in the conversation, but it's important we do that too. I mean, the ponage and the goofy drama and whatnot really should be an augmentation or an add-on for the thing that brings us together. So maybe move a little closer to that. I think the thing that sort of piqued my curiosity was through your comments and your other Hangouts, and then you just now said it expressly, that you don't see yourself as someone to sort of, I don't want to paraphrase you poorly, but you're here to bang a drum for Jesus, whether Jesus' divinity is true or not. But your interest in this is finding what's true and sharing that message of what's true. And obviously, for a guy with my attitude towards that, that to me is really interesting, because if you're to ask me why I do this, that's going to be my answer. And then what we get to is that, well, the only thing we differ in then is that we just have a different view of what's true. But I'm going to tell you honestly, Trey, that is not the answer I get. And even you saying it makes me a little suspicious and skeptical, because that's not the justification that's given to us for people's conduct in the Google Plus community when it comes to the people that I generally refer to as radical evangelicals. I don't want to use the term Christian too broadly. But they are not, you get in a discussion with them and they're not interested in saying, well, okay, let's sit down and figure out how we determine what's true. And from there, let's decide, is it important to share a message of truth, or sometimes is it better to lie to people? They're not interested in any of that discussion. Their whole discussion is, the Bible says it's true. First, I start with believing the Bible's true. Amongst that, the Bible says it's true. The Bible says we're supposed to tell other people it's true. And the Bible also says we can't change people's minds anyway. So I just got to preach the word, preach the word, preach the word, spread the gospel. And it doesn't matter if I'm a dick to people in the process, and it doesn't matter if they're interested in a search for the truth or I'm interested in the search for the truth, because the point is, there's the Bible, let's go. They're a lot harder to discuss, so I'm actually going to probably feel a little more challenged with this conversation if that's your view. Did you want to?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to say a couple of things. I am a different bird than most people that you're going to meet because of my perspective. I don't know if you've heard of other Hangouts. I'm generally pretty quick to give credit to Dr. R.C. Sproul. He's a Christian theologian and philosopher, and almost everything I know from him, or I know on this subject, I've learned from him. And he is not a presuppositionalist. I am not a presuppositionalist. And I love my presuppositional brothers, but the more I interact with presuppositionalists, the more alarmed I become at that paradigm. I don't think it's historical Christianity. I don't think it's really biblically faithful. And I'm going to get myself into trouble here, but I just, the more I interact, I think presuppositional is exactly what we don't need in today's society. And I think what it is it's a residual effect of the work of Immanuel Kant in the 18th century with his critique of pure reason, basically putting God into the noumenal realm where we cannot know God, therefore it's something we just need to take in blind faith. I don't think that we should ever take anything on blind faith. To me, that's what Kool-Aid in Guyana and airplanes into buildings is what's about. We as Christians need to have justification for our view, and we need to be rationally coherent and cogent with our views. Not only apologetics for me first is for myself. Is what I believe true? And then secondly, for my neighbor or for someone else. So if I cannot justify something rationally, if it's not that which comports to reality, it can't be true. So my fear is, I believe that presuppositionalism was made as a paradigm. It purports to be something is founded upon faith. I don't think it's founded on faith. I think it's founded on fear. And I think that they think that just to make sure that you never lose the argument, you engage in an informal fallacy of begging the question, which makes you infallibly right. The problem is it's invalid, and I just don't think that's helpful. So I love my brothers and I appreciate the work they're doing. There's some of the greatest theologians today, most of them I would say, are presuppositionalists. I don't quite understand it, but the more I interact with it, the more alarmed I become that this is not helpful for society and something we need to be remedied of rather than embrace.
Yeah, I'm greatly entertained by that, because my my backhanding of presuppositionalism without naming, and I don't even mean all of presuppositionalism. I really, in particular, sort of the YouTube version of the Seitan Brukenkate version of Van Tillian presuppositionalist. I mean, the things are so denatured and distorted now. We're not really talking about the original Kantian arguments, but my backhanded slap at those guys was apparently not subtle, or was not subtle enough because you obviously recognized what I was talking about, and you were very quick to. I don't think you're going to run afoul. I think they're going to disagree with you about that, and if they do end up watching this hangout, I think they'll be gnashing their teeth a little bit at some of your comments. But I think you expressed it sort of objectively and lovingly enough that they really shouldn't take after you. But I mean, I think it gives them something to think about. From there, do you want to move forward and I mean, if you clearly you're in a situation where you've got a message that you want to spread, and as I've seen it, and again I haven't seen all your material, but as I've seen it, it comes in the form of a logical argument. Not that I want to paint you into that. It's just that for the audience's benefit, how this discussion came to be was Ozymandias had put up a comment on Alex's video featuring you. Alex's comment referred to it as like a junkyard of fallacies or something.
Ozzy did.
Yeah, it was unkind.
Oh no, I don't. I'm fine with that. I like smack talk. But I don't like it when somebody talks smack talk and then they won't talk to me in my face, which is what Ozzy's doing. I'm challenging him right here, right now. Come out and talk to me. I'm not an educated guy. I'm not smart, but I have challenged that man over and over and over and over, and he will not talk to me. And I'm saying, well, that's fine, but don't talk smack if you're not willing to back it up. That's my thing.
Well, you watch me not speak for Ozzy. He's articulate enough. He can address what's going on there. I have seen your comments. You border on saying, so there's one thing I've objected to a lot here, and again, we do want to move forward to talk about what you'd hope to talk about here, but just in terms of the tone of the conversation, that if you aren't sort of following the day-to-day, one thing I'm really annoyed by is this thing about you go to set up a conversation with somebody, and it's not a convenient time or a convenient day, or because of the G+ goofiness, like sometimes I sent you a message, you didn't realize that it was on. I sent it to you through Hangouts, not through the Google Plus private thing. There's a number of reasons why a debate challenge doesn't get taken up immediately. Often the person doesn't even know about it. Well, no, those guys, True Empiricism or G-Man or any of those guys, they'll turn around and say, oh, that guy's a coward. He knows he's wrong. He knows his argument. He knows I would crush him in debate. Nephilim Free's bad for that too. And I sort of a couple things you're typing that make me think you're kind of bordering on calling Ozzy a pussy for not doing a hangout with you. I don't think he would do that, but you get my point. I don't know why he's not doing that, but I will say Ozzy's a very approachable fellow. And
indeed.
I think he's given what I think is a fairly thorough, at least written sort of response to some of the material you're bringing up. But why don't we just say, okay, well, that's out there. I mean, Ozzy, I'm sure subsequently will, if he's not watching now, we'll see this. But actually, I think we're going to be talking this evening about the show tomorrow. So I'll pester him. I mean, I'm not going to say why he's not responding the way you want him to, but if you want, I think you're interesting to talk to, I'll pester him. But given the moment here, so we got about a half hour left of your time, and what is it that you wanted to tell me that either that you was something that you were trying to impress upon? The reason I brought this up was because Ozzy had put that comment. I put a thing that I felt was like what I thought was your problems in your discussion with Alex, and you said, okay, well then let's do this. So that's how we get to this point. I think we agreed through that chat, which most people haven't seen. I mean, it's in a comment thread, but not everybody reads all the comments. Alex has got a style. I mean, I don't know if you're... Anyway, let me just open the door for you to present what you feel that you were trying to tell Alex that he might not have been receptive to, or because of the pacing of your conversation, it just didn't come out the way you wanted it to, or if you since think differently and think you have a different thing. Just take the floor, whatever you're in the mood for.
Well, I mean, I don't think that Alex anything came out wrong about what I said or anything like that. I don't. Well, okay, let me say this about my hangout with Alex. It was funny because he said, necessarily to my argument, you've got to include the idea of analogical language because there must be language of analogy because you cannot communicate eternality with contingency. And so Alex says, no, I'm not going to grant you analogical language. And then at minute 50, look it up, at minute 50, he basically appeals to an infinite regress through quantum vacuum fluctuation and then says we must understand it analogically. I thought it was hilarious. And so My argument is perfectly coherent, and it's based upon, again, the law of non-contradiction. Alex defied the law of non-contradiction and then said we need to understand it analogically. So he made a fallacious argument and then appealed to the very thing that he said that I cannot use in my argument. Watch it at minute 50. So I thought that was really rich. And I love Alex.
I've seen your comment about
I really
that.
like him. He's a fun guy.
He is. He's a really fun guy. He gets under the skin, especially the presuppers really, and they actually. I've seen him kind of take it out on him personally. I mean, he's got a style. He runs a channel on YouTube. Like, what do you want him to be nice to everybody all the time? I really like the guy. But anyway, so rather than sort of jumping ahead to that point, I did see your comment about that thing, and I did think, yeah, I got to reload that video and look at the 50-minute thing, but I didn't get to that point yet. Why don't you back up and actually run through the premises of that argument, and I'll try to express to you why I sort of thought it was, as I referred to it, as a jetpack-powered leaps of non-logic. So you go first, though.
Yeah, that's fine. All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, what I'm saying is I must have the two presuppositions of basic reliability of sense perception, so that I, as an inquirer, that I know that I exist. Hold on, my computer went out. Okay. And then secondly, that the law of non-contradiction or rational coherence. Will you grant me those two presuppositions? HogTie.
Sorry, I did. Sorry, can you repeat them again real quick?
Yeah, will you grant me the two presuppositions of basic reliability of sense perception, so that I, as an inquirer, know that I exist, and then secondly, the law of non-contradiction?
I hesitantly do so because I think your justification for the reliability, saying, well, I know that I exist. You know that you exist, even if your senses were completely unreliable. Your knowledge of your own existence is completely untethered from your sensation of the external world. 1 second, please.
Gotta deal with the kids.
Yeah, actually, that is entirely my fault. I thought I had 2 cartoons queued up there, but apparently there was only one, and one of them had tapered out. And I would normally just excuse myself and go set up another one, but we only have a few minutes left, so rather than stepping away to do that, no. So I mean, Cartesian, I think, therefore I am. I mean, you can be assured that you exist, but you don't necessarily exist in your form. You don't know that you have, brown hair or blue eyes or any of that stuff. You can't rely on any of your senses. You know that the thing that is you is your thinking, and whatever parcel that thinking comes in, you don't know anything about. That's where the senses come in. And of course, as the reliability of senses, we should make clear that we mean the reliability is not perfect reliability. That is, that there's some when you wake up in the morning and open your eyes and you see the sun, it looks the same. But the second one was the one. Okay, what was the second one? I think that was the one I really had a problem with.
The law of non-contradiction.
And I mean, we can adopt that as
a
premise. But what I'm concerned about there is that and what?
Or rational coherence.
So I would be curious to see how that's going to fit into your argument. And we can accept that as a premise for your discussion. But the problem is then, a lot of times, and maybe you're not going this way, but the transcendental argument folks tend to look at the law of non-contradiction as something that's sort of interwoven with the fabric of existence. And they make it's something that almost transcends reality. Perhaps that's not where you're going. Let me grant those premises then and not bog you down on that point. But I don't know what you mean when you say grant the law of non-contradiction. Like it is what it is.
Okay, but if you don't grant those two, you have no inquiry. If I, as an inquirer, don't exist, there's no inquiry. If I cannot have rational coherence in my inquiry, there is no inquiry. So, I mean, if you're going to object to those, you're the only person I've ever met that's done that. But I don't know how in the world else we're going to move forward unless we have those.
Yeah. No, I don't object to you exist. You exist. I exist. That's not a problem. Everybody sort of faces that.
Or just me as an inquirer. I mean, I can be a solid system as long as I exist. That's all I need. I just need someone who's asking the question, and if I don't grant that, then we're done. And if I don't grant that we can have coherence and understanding of such things, we're done. So we got to have those two. I mean, there's no
and of course,
way around
I grant
that.
I grant those. Obviously, that makes sense, and I grant even the law of non-contradiction. I have a concern in how it is sometimes applied by folks arguing transcendental arguments, which I don't think yours is. So yeah, we can move past that.
Okay.
Especially in the interest of time.
We'll move on then. Let me go on. All right. So getting those two premises, I know that I, as an inquirer, happen, that I exist, that I have. I may have this essence, a sense of being within my existence, but I also am necessarily imbued with becoming, that I happen, that I am changing, that I am contingent, that I am not self-existent. And so I know, according to the law of non-contradiction, that something cannot be and not be at the same time and in the same relationship, and therefore I must posit that since I am contingent, there must be something, somewhere, somehow, that has the attribute of self-existence. Otherwise, contingency would not exist.
Okay, so again, I think this is where you guys go into discussion about the infinite regress, right? Is that if you say, well, I'm contingent, you know, this computer's contingent, this water bottle's contingent, things that I make are contingent upon me, but since I'm contingent, they're also contingent indirectly on what I'm contingent on. And this has to end somewhere. We can't just have a chain of contingent things that are, you know, contingent upon, ancestrally contingent upon all these things ad infinitum. At some point, there has to be something that wasn't contingent on something. You know, intuitively that makes sense. I will, let's say, 99% granted, because there may be a view of the universe that means that something can come into existence without being eternally self-existing, I guess.
Well, eternal self-existence doesn't happen. I mean, that's the whole point. And so if you're going to appeal to something that happens, it's not self-existent, it's contingent. And if you're going to say, well, it could be 99% and there's 1% that I just don't know, then you have the burden to demonstrate it through some means. And if you don't, then you're violating the law of parsimony.
We got two problems there. One of them is, I wish I could have tracked your words there as quickly as you said them. You said some things that are happening are non. Say something about the happening, that they're either happening or they're
something. If something is happening, it is contingent by definition. So if you want to speak of self-existence or something having change within it whatsoever, then it is by definition contingent.
By which definition? By the definition of happening or contingent? When you say by definition, I mean the phrase by definition means that you've created a set, right? And you've
well, that's what contingent means. Contingent means something that happens. It means something that's dependent for its existence. That's what the word means. It's
those are two different things. But those are two different things. So is it something that happens, or are the set of objects that you're calling contingent, right? So we're going to take all the objects that can be conceived of, whether they exist or not, and of those that exist, we're going to create a subset of those that we're going to call contingent objects. And so what fits in that set? What are the properties of the thing so I can pick something up or think about something or whatever and say, okay, this thing is contingent. How do I know if something is contingent or not contingent? What is
it's subject to change.
Property?
It happens. It happens. It changes. It's can be acted upon. Anything.
Okay.
I can take my shoe, and that's, my shoe is contingent because I can bend it.
Okay.
R.C. Sproul first said that. I was thinking about that was an example when he first did this argument when I heard it first several years ago, and I'm like, what in the world is he talking about? Now it's like second nature to me. When I first heard that, it was so bizarre. I was like, what is he saying? But it's Aristotelian logic, and you've got being and becoming. You've got actuality, potentiality. Heraclitus and Parmenides were the first pre-Socratics to kind of come up with these categories. And that which is being, that has no change, and that which is becoming is change. And you can't have the changing stuff without something that is not changing.
Okay, so what's an example then of something that isn't contingent? What's something that isn't changing?
It's that which gives rise to contingency. Remember my presuppositions, law of non-contradiction. Something cannot be and not be. If something happens, it could not have happened out of nothing. If there ever were a time when there were absolutely nothing, we would have nothing today. Since there is something, there must be something eternal.
That's inserted. That claim was just inserted and also doesn't address the question I'm asking. What I'm doing is I'm saying I'm trying to get to the bottom of how you're using this contingent. Like we got a set of things that are contingent and then a set of things that are not contingent.
Well, we can't have a set of things that are non-contingent. There can only be one thing that is non-contingent
Why
by
is
logic.
that?
Because if you had two things that were self-existent and it was not the same being, but it had two beings who had different attributes, one would have attributes that are different from the other, and one would by necessity be subject to the other, therefore he would be contingent, or it would.
Why would they be subject to the? I don't. That part I don't. I mean, your answer was quick, but I don't. It doesn't strike me something you thought through, and that's probably an unkind thing to say. But why could there not be two non-contingent objects in your universe of discourse here?
Are there going to be?
Because the thing you slipped in there is you said that one of them must depend on the other. Why would that?
If there is a difference in an attribute, and they have the same attribute, say in knowledge. Because if they're exactly the same, it's going to be the same being. But if there is some differentiation between the two, then one of those is going to have an attribute that is not the same as the other, and one would have to be under the other, and therefore it would be contingent by definition. It wouldn't be self-existent.
Start shaking my head at the moment.
Possible.
Yeah. As I'm listening, I'll nod, and then I'll shake my head at the jump the shark moment. Because you're saying, well, they can have different attributes, right? If all of their attributes are the same, that is, if it was possible to come up with a comprehensive set of attributes for, object A and object B, and it turns out they have identical attributes, then that's identity, right? It's the same thing, right? So now we're really talking about one thing with two labels. But then you say, well, what if we consider the possibility where A is one thing and B is another thing, and amongst their attributes, A has an attribute that B doesn't have, or they differ in some particular quantity or quality. Mm-hmm. And then you say, well, then one has to be under the other. One has to be subject to the other. One has to be dependent on the other. And that's where I go, okay, well, hang on, okay, what is that about? Where does that come from?
Well, I mean, it seems like you agreed with me until that very last statement. Yeah. I'm not sure what you're saying.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah.
So if there's a difference in an attribute, there must be differentiation between them, and one would not be the same as the other. Therefore, it would not be self-existent. It could be differentiated. Therefore, it would not be the same thing.
Well, I'm with you at the beginning and the end. Yes, it would not be the same thing.
Okay.
But why? So they're different. How can they not? And also notice that we're not talking about contingent anymore. Now we're talking about self-existent.
Right.
Right. What was your definition for contingent again? It was things
that which happens, that which is dependent. It could either be or not be. Things with becoming, the attribute of becoming.
Yeah, but that's why I was asking at the beginning, because you'll talk about contingent things, and then you'll also then talk about, well, things that are self-existing or things that are created and things like that, and that's not your definition, right? So you've kind of confounded the entry criteria for your group of what's contingent, and I really, so I mean, like this is what I had tried to address in that comment too. It's even hard to sort of identify the various gaps in this argument, and that's why I referred to it as jetpack powered leaps of non-logic, because you can sort of lay this out 1, 2, 3, 4, but at times listening to the argument, I'd say, okay, well, how did we get from first off, how do we get from this notion that there's the set of contingent objects, and every object is either in that set of contingent objects or they're not in the set of contingent objects. And at the same time, completely parallel with that distinction, you've got things that are self-existing and things that were created. That is not part of the definition. You'll say, well, then it's by definition, and it's not included in the definition. But I think even more problematic is this notion. I see where you argue towards there has to be, like, this set of non-contingent objects can't be empty. Right? You're saying otherwise it leads to an infinite regress. I get that. But then why can't there be two?
Why can't there be two self-existent?
Yeah.
Well, again, the self-existent must, of all the attributes, it must be the superlative of that, right?
What do you mean superlative of
Well,
what?
It can't be lacking in anything. It has to be superlative of every attribute.
Oh, it has to be maximally greatest in everything. So for a thing to be non-contingent, it has to be omnimax and super
Well,
powerful.
it can't be to the point where something else could be greater than that or subject to it.
So you're saying that that there has to be precisely one non-contingent object in the universe, and it has to be maximally intelligent, maximally tall, maximally the most red thing ever, the most orange thing ever, the smelliest thing ever.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Well, that's the thing is that these extra conditions kind of get slipped in, and I go, okay, well, where does this come from? Again, I think that's a really huge gap. Is to say, I mean, I do have a problem with this. Okay, first up, let's get back to the, because I'm mindful of the time here. I do want to be respectful.
Yeah, my daughter has to be to work at 4 o'clock, and my son's got to be at 4:20. So I've got to, at 3:50.
Yeah.
My pumpkin arrives.
Yeah. As I'm thinking we've got, sorry, at 3. Yeah. So that gives us like 6 minutes left. So what I'm going to do, and I think to the, I wonder if the audience is going to wring their hands and say, we really want to see this kind of blow up.
We can
we're too gentlemanly to let it blow up. But I just think this gives us our first sort of face-to-face chance for me to tell you why I put that comment up there, because this is why I find so frustrating about your presentation of this argument, is that I have to sit back and go, I don't even know where to start, like to show, because it's not even looking for loose threads in the argument. You've got a pillar of an argument here, and a pillar of an argument here, and a pillar of an argument, across the street, and there's no beams or girders in between, right? It's just sorry, I'm shaking my computer. I'm going to G-Man with my laptop here. I'll try to stop doing that. You don't know who G-Man is, but you just got these chasms between, and they're bridged together only by taking a premise and then saying, oh, well, this is just necessarily, obviously that's an obvious part of it, and like this thing about there being precisely one. So let me just sort of get to my sort of take on it, is that to me, what I find weird about this argument, and I wonder, because I also was a little bit, I mean, I was quite critical of your discussion there with Alex, but I was a little bit critical of Alex's constant, going back to talking about quantum vacuum fluctuations, because I could not initially get a read on whether he was using that as an example, because he was saying, well, that's why he believes the universe started, because I don't believe that's what Alex believes. I don't think any of us in this discussion, maybe Matt Hunt, can tell you, what these theoretical physicists are thinking in terms of quantum vacuum fluctuations and these virtual particles, and and now this new model about how the Big Bang actually started after this long curve of time, so that it's always existed. Like, none of us understand that stuff. I mean, so I don't know if Alex was just sort of using that as a counterexample to say that there are these other things, or if he was saying, well, actually, that's what I think the cause of the universe is. I think if he's saying that's what he thinks the cause of the universe is, I don't think that's really the case. But I also
I think he was saying it was a possibility, and I think it's nonsense, and we don't have time to talk about that now.
This is where I think, a lot of times these discussions kind of go off the rails because somebody will and usually it's someone on the non-believer side will do this. They'll sort of be arguing a correct. There's a bare bone structure of a reductio ad absurdum, where we're saying, we're listening to your argument and say, okay, well, wait a minute, if your second premise is true, and we'll say things like, well, Spider-Man, the Spider-Man comics have New York City in it. Well, then therefore, that must mean you believe Spider-Man's true. And of course, that's not really what the argument is. We're pointing out that there's a premise in your argument that if you were to swap out the actual reference in that premise to be something else, it leads to an absurdity, which should be your first clue that there's something wrong with that premise. When you guys say of the Bible, and not you in particular, Trey, but a lot of your brothers and sisters will say, well, look, here's something that's mentioned in the Bible, and it turns out that it's true. Okay, well, that's great. There's lots of stuff that's mentioned in the Bible that's just rock solid. But that doesn't then give you warrant to accept the whole thing as true. If it did, right. Harry Potter's mentions London, and everything else. So anyway, so go back to, I think when Alex mentions this thing about these particles and quantum vacuum fluctuations and stuff, he's saying that the world is stranger than we had ever guessed it to be. Mm-hmm. And what I see is really a critical flaw in your argument is that when you say, it's sort of a version of this, well, everything that everything that begins has a cause, right? And there's got to be a cause of that cause, and a cause of that cause, and a cause of the cause of the cause, and at some point there has to be something at the beginning of this chain. And we've all watched this argument time and time again. We've watched it to being this kernel at the beginning, and then it blows up into the Christian God, and not just any God, but the Christian God, and not just any version of the Christian God, but my particular version of the Christian God. We've all seen it so many times. And the thing is, you say even those arguments that sort of lead to a deistic notion that, like, yeah, I suppose there could be a God that created everything, but how do you know he's still interested or involved in our lives? Well, the thing is, your argument, as I understand it, Trey, just says there has to be something that started it. And this is where I kind of latch on Alex's point that, well, yeah, okay, sure, even if you accept there had to be something that started it, well, what was that something? It could have been a quantum vacuum fluctuation. Could have been a turtle fart, right? Like, the argument, as I understand it, that there's something at the end of this chain.
No, you did the same thing as Alex did. You appealed to an infinite regress. And you know what? I don't have time to go into this, but I really 1 minute. I really want to discuss the necessity of causality, as it's just an extrapolation of the law of non-contradiction, and we don't really have time here. So we definitely need to come back and do this. But I mean, I need to get going.
Yeah, you're literally in the last minute, so yeah, what we can do is squeeze our thank yous. I will, if the audience is going to stick around for a minute, I'm going to post the link in the chat, sorry, in my Google Plus feed and on the comment section for this video as it appears on YouTube. And but I understand it's actually just hit 3:50 your time now, Trey. So I'm glad we had a chance to sort of chat informally a little bit too, and I think we kind of ran aground pretty quick. I think in part because we had that comment exchange, and I think you knew where I stood on these issues. And I still detect that you're feeling like I don't understand your argument. And rarely will I concede that point, because usually I get what the other guy's saying, and the fact that I don't agree is not a result of me not understanding. I'm going to concede in your case. I still think I'm not entirely getting how you get from point to point. I'm not saying you're wrong about it, but I'm actually willing to part ways at this moment and acknowledge to you that I still think I need to hear from you again what you believe closes the gaps that I've been hoping to draw to your attention.
Well, I'm great. I'm sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk with you. You are a very knowledgeable and kind-hearted guy, and these are the kind of conversations that I really relish. A lot of people I talk to are not, I don't know, they just don't even understand what we're talking about. So whenever I get somebody like you, it's always a blast, because I can, test my view and maybe even hone it, and hopefully we can have some learning from each other as we interact in this. But that being said, I need to run, and so you're going to continue. You guys going to have a hangout after? I mean, continue with.
Yeah, we'll be as courteous as possible. I mean, we're going to make fun of you behind your back a little bit.
I don't. Let me tell you something. I have a very thick funny bone, and I love. I love the sass. That's why I like atheists so much, because they have a funny bone like me. I get along with them very well. So that's fine. You can poke it at me, but be sure you're going to show up and talk to me face to face if you're gonna do that. So anyway, that being said, I need to go, my friend, and it's nice to meet you. And thank you very much for this. And I know that we will get together soon, sometime, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, be well. Have fun at soccer. I'm not giving away. I'm not dropped off in soccer.
Yeah.
Anyway, have a good day.
Okay, we'll see you.
Yeah.
Bye.
So come on in, folks. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to wander on in. So I posted the link. I believe that is shared both on Google. I will say, while I'm waiting for a couple of people to show up, I'll give you a little bit of my response to it. And I think I was fairly honest with him about it. I just I probably wasn't as mean to him. I think it was my first conversation with him, and I don't really feel the need to sort of bash a guy's fenders when he's actually being very polite. I've heard some criticism of his character from other people, and I don't really detect that. He seems like a fine fellow to me. I find the argument, well, where I say there are big gaps, it's not even there are big gaps. It seems that these large gaps between the pillars of the argument are actually filled with like squid ink clouds, right? And I think some of you would be a little frustrated to hear me say, well, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I just got to be honest about it. I don't want to sort of declare I'm wrong with a wave of a hand like I do with some people. When I can demonstrate, with some people, I mean, philosophy is not really my strong suit. I mean, you've seen me in discussions where I'm talking with somebody about, I'm not going to say who, but about like science issues, and I can say, well, that person's just wrong about that, and I can put out the justification for it there. but where I am not as well versed in either the history of philosophy of mind or history of philosophy of epistemology or in the history of apologetics. And he actually seems, to actually be reading this material, not just these Christians that pretend to read it and then come into Hangouts like somehow they know more about it than we do. I'm not going to sort of be abusive and abrasive to him. I think I got to give him another chance to really try to help clarify what he thinks it is I misunderstand about his argument, and then I'll be a jackass. So once again, taking a quick scan. I really appreciate you guys watching. My channel is not, I do a lot of Hangouts, just not on my own channel, and I think it was just sweet of you folks to show up and watch and to comment. And I was kind of hoping, I'm getting a couple of comments here, people wishing I'd asked a question I hadn't asked. Don't worry, Mr. Botten, you'll get a chance to ask that question. Not understanding it analogically. Of the people that I'd sort of reached out to this week, and unfortunately our schedule didn't match up. I had hoped to talk to J.D. Kane and to, name is there, and my understanding was that they were aware that Trey and I were doing this Hangout today, and I was kind of hoping that one of those two gentlemen. Oh, actually, I'll tell you what helps too if you want people to join your broadcasts, is that when they you show up and you have cameraman running, that you actually have to add them to the broadcast.
It can help things. Yes.
Hey. Yeah, I know I'm sitting here bitching about it. I thought people were going to come in and want to talk about this, and then I realized, oh, here you are, and I'm not letting you in. Without drop docking you, how you enjoying the weather today?
Oh, it's beautiful. I don't know. It's so weird. These huge fluctuations in temperature are what really gets me. I know it's kind of played havoc with our roads, though. So it's good to see you again, HogTie.
Yeah. No, it's been, and that's why I'm doing a lot of traveling lately. And I was in Rocky Mountain House yesterday.
Oh boy, yeah.
So west of that, just beautiful. Got a little bit of wind and blowing snow. It's a little bit colder there than here, but just idyllic, right? But except for the mud. Like, I'm sorry, it's it's mid-February on the east face of the the Alberta side of the Rockies, and you're getting stuck in mud like.
Yeah, it's true. All these camps are supposed to be nice and hard roads for them all the way up until at least spring, but they're having trouble getting trucks up there these days.
Yeah, it's greasy. And before I'm going to ask you what's on your mind, I do wish to offer some feedback, which will be praise for you breaking your essential kind-hearted Canadian spirit. You met Mr. Brett Keane yesterday.
Yeah, it was the first time. It was an interesting experience.
You were kind of impolite, I got to say.
Sorry about that.
No, hey, fuck off! Don't apologize to me about that.
It's funny because I went around and apologized to everybody else in the Hangout except for Brett. That's a very Canadian thing to do, I suppose.
Yeah, no, you're even untypically polite for a Canadian. He's a hard pill to swallow some days. When he's in there, it's like, no, I just went shopping and I got a whole bunch of cleaning materials and I'm going to put on my frilly apron and big yellow gloves and I'm going to do all this cleaning because while my wife's at the shelter, I've got no one here to do all my cleaning and I want to know what you think about the chemicals.
Yeah, it was an interesting way to go with his analogy.
Yeah.
But it was a clear distraction, and I was kind of excited to see G-Man at least asking some good questions. I always like it when sometimes G-Man has a hard time getting to the answers, but I'm always encouraged when I see him ask an actual smart question, and I think that's
Which question are you talking about? This why is it wrong for a person to own another person?
Yeah, I thought that was a great.
It is, and I don't know how much we get to see each other's comments and whatnot. I've been really encouraging people. I actually just in the last week, maybe 2 weeks, when I don't have time to do a Hangout, I'll sometimes pop in right when it goes off air, just to sort of touch base with people and chat with them and whatnot, and keep contact, raise issues for future discussion. And I've been popping into Hangouts after they've gone off air lately to say, hey, so G-Man's been asking this question lately about why is it? And everybody's been answering, not everybody, the most common answer has been almost axiomatic, right? It's almost been, well, slavery is wrong because it's wrong for people to own people. Why is it wrong for people to own people? Well, because that would be immoral. That would be wrong. We don't want people owning people. And the reason is, I think it's like, I have a good analogy for this. When something has been something for so long, you can't, you've just, it's so obvious. You just lose track of the understanding of what the underpinnings for that thing being the way it is. Why do we drive on the right-hand side of the road? Why does red mean? Well, that's a bad example. That's not at all an analogy because those things are arbitrary.
I like to think of it more like language, right? When we internalize a language, we tend to, there's certain ways of speaking that we think sound right or sound accurate, right? And it's very difficult to tell people why we say the instead of the in certain situations, and it's very socially motivated and constructed around us. And that's really what I love about the question. Is it's very much like we have a very guttural response to it. It feels very natural to say no, of course not. That of course we shouldn't. But I think G-Man's he might be stepping out on the other side of that issue for the wrong reasons, but I think it's an interesting way to look at it because it is actually a question that can be asked.
Yeah. Oh, I think that summary of it is absolutely excellent because that's what I see too. I go, that's a great question, and it's one that we're not answering. The reason we're not answering is because we're not thinking about it. And by the way, not to puff up, and G-Man's going to be like, oh, HogTie admitted the blah, 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 because people did come in and try to give the answer. There were people who came in and said things about limitations on liberty and trying to say that there is something foundational, but then he would dodge and he'd start talking about, oh well, but what if you didn't limit their freedom? Well, that's not the point. The point is that this person has the freedom, the choice, they're empowered now to do these things, and we're saying sort of structurally that's not a helpful thing. I can flesh that out a little bit more, but I don't want to sort of. I mean, I think what's more interesting now is this meta issue that G-Man's asked this really interesting question, and for most of us, it gives us a chance to say, well, that's obvious. No, wait a minute, it's not obvious. I have to think about this. And then even though it doesn't change your thinking on an issue, it helps your thinking. It helps you understand the underlying thinking a little bit more. But at the same time, you've got the people who are bringing this question to our attention, G-Man and Brett Keane and whatnot. They don't give a fuck what the answer is. They don't care what the thinking or the thought process is. They think it's the biggest gotcha question in the world. And they're rubbing their hands together like, oh, these atheists are having difficulty explaining a complicated issue. Well, you don't understand that complicated issue yourself. When we ask you, okay, you explain to us why a person owning another person is wrong. You go, well, wait a minute, I didn't say it was wrong. I think it's okay. Like, I'm sorry, how fucked up is your thinking?
Yeah, exactly. I think there is this little bit of glee that you can sense in their asking the question and the way that they go about it. But I think it's still a great question. So yeah, I was really excited to get a chance to interact with Brett, but I was sort of disappointed that he chose to distract away from what was really a productive conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there is maybe a little bit of hesitancy on G-Man's part to tell Brett that his interaction maybe isn't as required, because it seems like sometimes. G-Man will lean on Brett a little bit in those hangouts, and I think it's kind of a bad habit for him. I think he's ordinarily very good on his own. But.
Yeah, I think one thing, there are a couple of people that tend to have that feature in their character, G-Man and Nephilim Free in particular, that if you ever just go to them, like if it only works if you're a believer, but if you say, boy, you did a good job, you really set a trap for that guy. I saw, boy, you really, and that happened in that hangout where, who was it was in there? It happened fairly early in the hangout where somebody was doing this and he goes, well, you set a trap for him, but the big trap, which wasn't even a trap, but they were saying, like, everybody was agreeing that the indentured servitude thing is not the issue, that people can contract, people, amongst the liberties that you possess are the liberties to contract away your liberties, right? That's a terrible way of wording it. But, right now, I have a car parked there, and I am free to drive that car. But I'm also free to sign a contract with you to where the car would be parked at your place, and you would have the keys, and you would be able to use it. And I wouldn't be allowed to use it anymore because we would treat it as your car in exchange for something that you give me, whether it's money or mow my lawn or whatever else. So part of liberty is the ability to negotiate your liberties in exchange for other things of value. And nobody has a problem with this. And that's the thing is if they, oh, well, let's talk about mortgages now. We're going to talk about the mortgage. Well, I'm sorry, mortgage doesn't make you a slave. You borrow money from somebody, you have to pay the money back. And if you make an I mean, let's say that this was an older system and it wasn't done through electronic banking. I mean, let's say that the deal was that if you wanted to borrow money from somebody who had a lot of money, you then also had to live on a corner of that person's plot of land, and you had to, feed his cattle and do whatever else and work for the person. That's how you paid back the money. Well, you know what? That option's still available to people today. It's just not commonly taken up. But they will talk about those things ad nauseum as a way of avoiding the thing. So everybody says, look, yes, we agree with that. We agree with that. We agree with that. Can we please get on and talk about this notion of going into another country and taking people as captives and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do now. You are going to go work over here. You're going to work over here. You two dudes are sold to that guy over there. He's giving me money. Get in his cart. He's going to drag you away. You, young lady, we're going to cut off your hair and your fingernails and put you in a sack for a couple of days until your hair starts to grow back. And then, hey, now you're my girlfriend. Like, oh, but that's not slavery. That's captives of war. Come on, like.
Yeah, it's this weird goalpost that just seems to shift. It's like it's almost on wheels.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, it's exactly the point. I mean, and I that's the thing is I always hear them talk about like, oh well, slavery, we're all sort of slaves to the man or to the government or somehow this ownership is we're all just owned by somebody else, or it's not necessarily the ownership that's the problem. But I think that it distracts away from the issue that slavery is this removal of the person's ability to make that decision, right? I think it's a complete removal of that person's ability to assess their own situation and to make that decision for themselves. And I think when we're talking about indentured servitude and things like that, there can be unfortunate circumstances that may force a person, but they're still making that assessment for themselves that this is the way that they need to go, or the responsibility that they have.
Yeah, and I think what I would challenge people to do, and I have an answer to this, but oh jeez,
just all
sorry, what's this? Are you laughing?
Is Trey Jadlow Canadian? That would be.
I don't think so. He's a very polite fellow, but I kind of got the impression he's Ohio or Oregon, one of the O states. I don't know. It's Midwest. That's the term I'm looking for.
Excellent.
Oh, so we're on the other side of the Rockies now, are we?
Hey, hosers.
Hey, hosers. Oh, we got to have somebody from another country come in. It'll be fun. We'll be polite to each other. We'll still swear once in a while, and we need some stubby beer bottles. But let me, sorry, Chris, but let me just, I just want to, because I want to make this point. I have what I think is an answer. What I want to challenge people to do is to connect those dots, right? When somebody says, why is slavery wrong? There's a whole spectrum. I'm going to start from here and go this way. Why is slavery wrong? Well, what does it mean for something? We say, well, because it decreases liberty. Well, why is decreasing liberty a bad thing? How do you connect that to morality, right? So there is, I'm sure Sam Harris would tell you, there is a path from the concept of human flourishing, departure from the greatest conceivable suffering, to, from that point, there's a path to talking about liberty being something that's valuable. From there, that is your basis for morality, and therefore slavery is this departure. You can connect those dots, and we need to be doing it. We need to think those issues through, and to be doing that. So that's challenge number one to my brother and sister atheists. Number two, the second challenge I want to put out there is, now can we please close this loop and tell the Christians, can we please let them in on the joke? Why do we keep bringing up slavery? I mean, I know why we bring it up with G-Man, because it's funny to watch him like wig out when people say stuff about stuff that's in the Bible. But honestly, folks, let me ask you this: why are we so interested in talking about biblical slavery, not the transatlantic slave trade, but we're really energized? How does it help our agenda or a mission statement when we are pointing out to the radical evangelicals that we don't think people should own people, right? I think we're forgetting to tell them why this issue is relevant. I mean, they're making it hard to tell them, because every time you try to talk about it, they want to go off for 45 minutes about indentured servitude and then kick you from the room when you try to drag them back on topic, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, why is a good question. I mean, I think it's different for a lot of different people, but I think in the long run, there's sort of this. I think I see the underlying justification that was used for a lot of slavery, right? And I think that when we look at biblical slavery, especially, it may conform to some sort of cultural relevance, but I think there's definitely an element of it that we look at now that is clearly immoral, and we know that from our own point. But it seems to be I don't really know exactly why it's important. I'm scraping together. It seems different for every person I talk to. It almost seems like if we can point to a position in the Bible where God is clearly acting immorally or seeming to consent to something that is definitely immoral, we can at least point the believer to the idea that goodness doesn't come from a deity or some sort of hard and fast rule that you can't look to the example of this thing. You have to assess it for yourself as to whether or not it's good.
Oh, you believe you're your own God. I'm not even at all interested in introducing Chris. Everybody knows Chris, right? I'm sorry. Well, I didn't just drop dock you, did I? Nar Warrior. Sorry. Everybody knows you. No. Everybody knows your name, right? I can do that.
Yeah, I'm not in the closet.
So to speak. Well, we're interested in hearing your thoughts. I do actually have to step away for a minute. Give me like 4 or 5 minutes or whatever. What I've been waiting for, because you guys, you know how you act, like you're both have that same sort of attitude. So I've already sent a message to Brett Keane to come in and try to act as moderator to keep an eye on you guys. He hasn't responded yet, so I'll need to trust you alone for a moment.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, Brett Keane's the only one I would trust with my Hangouts. I will be right back. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just agreeing with you. You should give him the controls all the time, for sure.
Cool. Are we allowed to trash talk Trey while you're gone?
He understood that context. So for clarity, this is an 18+ broadcast. I mean, we try to let's be Canadian swearing, right? Throw one out there. Let's not get too nutty with it. And he understands that the ponage and goofiness and stuff is kind of part of the climate here. He's thick-skulled or thick-skinned. Ooh, Freud says.
Thick funny bone.
Oh, a thick funny bone. Yeah, I didn't get that either. I think he ought to be trash talked because he will come back and watch this subsequently, and I think that his claim. Let me say this then, is opening the trash talk. I'll tell you the thing that I kind of hoped wished I'd been a little more aggressive with him, because the thing that's funny and what sort of gets people's goats is his claim that, well, I've been making this argument, no one's defeated it. Well, let's trash talk him in a way that I think can help him up his game, because honestly, guys, we need somebody with some better game than the current crowd we're dealing with. If you'll excuse me, I shall return.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I thought that was it's an interesting claim to say that no one can refute your incomprehensible argument. It just seems like it's such a weird.
It sounds like the high. Sorry to interrupt you, but when he says that, it sounds like the Highlander right before he meets the Krogan. Why won't anybody fight me? Why is everyone so afraid of my argument?
Is that
I'm the Highlander?
No, I guess not.
Yeah. So then he meets the Krogan that impales him with the sword. But, anyways, movie reference. Carry on.
Cool. Well, HogTie didn't give me access to control room, so Psychosis is just going to have to wait offline. But it's a weird. Trey's argument is this really strange mishmash of several different apologetics, and I see where you brought up. I mean, you sent me a link to the argument from contingency, and I see where he's using that, but then he also uses what else was he using? That the maximally great being. He also slipped that in there, and he expressed that
that the law of non-contradiction is the same thing as rational coherence, which I thought that was a weird equation also. I don't know exactly what you thought about that, Chris, but it seems to me like he's rammed so many things in so fast that it's almost nearly impossible to really separate them and refute them properly.
Yeah, I think like as HogTie touched on, it's hard to really think about the whole argument because it's not as coherent as he claims. And personally, I'm a very pedantic pedestrian when it comes to philosophical arguments. And for me, his whole thing's like a non-starter. He starts off by saying that it's impossible for something to be eternal and not caused. And next step, he presents a God that's eternal and uncaused. It's not even an argument. It's just it's special pleading. He's using special pleading as if it's an argument, almost in a G-man style. But then he's got it couched in so many philosophical terms and smoke clouds that people are thinking that he's actually going to bring an argument, but he's really just claiming knowledge of the transcendent without justifying anything in a logical way, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good summary of it. I mean, he's shotgunning the argument clearly, and I think a lot of it is him reeling through it because he doesn't really get the connections to a lot of things. I noticed HogTie's insistence that he had to connect a few of his premises seemed to kind of throw him a little bit, like he'd never really pondered that idea that all these premises have to actually lead to one another. You can't just whale them together in a paragraph and hope that it floors the other person.
Yeah. Or if he appeals to the impossibility of an infinite regress, yet his God is exempt from.
Well, this is always the thing, right? I mean, the word non-contingent is just a placeholder for God in their mind, right? The non-contingency is the only their God is the only thing that fits within that box, and so it's just a placeholder. And if until they admit that, or at least admit that other things could fill that placeholder, we're sort of at an impasse. They've got us arguing for X, and neither of us know what fills that X. Yeah,
I think Hoggy tied on too that touched on why one, right? If God can do these things, why isn't there any other beings that could do those things?
Yeah,
if it's possible, it should be possible.
You could posit, that there would have to be some sort of minimum number of non-contingent, separate non-contingent beings before anything could take place, like a 10,000 mark or something like that. So I mean, it's not beyond the realm of possibility to just posit infinite X's to fill that void. Hi, Cy. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, sir.
It's very nice and sunny here.
You
bastard.
bastard.
Gonna go out in a little while, and it's like gonna be plus 12 here pretty soon.
Be tulips coming up pretty quick. Well, that's exciting for you guys.
Yep. So it's pretty nice. It's better than hanging out in Alberta.
Damn, it's cold today. But
Alberta's the worst.
Yeah, just the armpit of the earth. Let me tell you.
I'm originally from the Okanagan, so I make fun of my Okanagan friends, right? So because it's still pretty cold there.
That's where we go for vacation.
So you guys were talking about slavery, the reason why it was bad to own someone.
Yeah,
and
sure.
One of the things that I wanted to contribute was that you're taking away somebody's independent freedom, their freedom to choose to live their life the way that they want to. So what you're doing is you're actually putting limitations on someone, right? And harnessing down their possible capabilities that they could have with their life and their contribution to society, right? So if you enslave somebody, you give them a direct tasking to do, and only that tasking. They won't be able to grow independently on their own and be able to contribute to their community.
Yeah, I think people have touched on that, and I think the problem usually lies in in the idea that we place limitations on people's freedoms all the time, and we limit people within the construct of society on a regular basis. And I think there's maybe a gray line or maybe a broader spectrum of limitation that sort of gets emplaced. But I agree that it's really about taking away the power from the person. It's not necessarily the limitation of autonomy from the exterior. It's that person no longer has the right to make that assessment for themselves and to fall in line or not fall in line, right? And I think that's really where I disagree with it. But it's sort of it's again a question of limitations.
But in the past, we've had outliers of society that have brought good things to the table, and society has eventually changed, right? So even those things that are way off in left field, right, that most people may disagree with, give it a little bit of chance, and if more people get to look at and analyze some of those decisions that people make, maybe they'd be adopted in society, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important part, I mean, especially when we're discussing morality, I mean, I view morality very much like an empathetic response that we have to people, and we're discussing why we have that response and why we should have certain responses. And when it comes to slavery, I have that empathetic response to that person who would be in that situation and have their autonomy limited in a way that would, like you said, I mean, contract their growth as a person or as a human being. And I think that that empathy is something to develop. And I think that when we start to talk about people as being owned by someone else, that devaluation is going to lead to a devaluation in terms of empathy. And that's why it is essentially wrong to own another person as a human being, or to even consider them as the property of someone else would be, I think, an immoral stance to be considering another person.
I mean, slavery necessarily has to entail somebody suffering. The slave is not doing, when you live your life, you try and set up your life so that you're comfortable, and the slave's not afforded the comforts that they want, so they're necessarily suffering, and that's the problem. We have empathy. We don't appreciate suffering. I think in the time of the Bible, they were usually people that enslave people are able to think of that race of people or that nationality of people as somehow less human. But now we're afforded the ability to see the world and understand that racism is stupid and nationalism is not not necessarily a good thing if you take it to the point of slavery. So, slavery is bad because it causes suffering. Suffering is bad by definition. Rant over.
And you were talking about empathy just a little bit ago, and the thing is, our times will change again, right? And maybe the people in the future will look back at us and say, well, how did people let this happen, And I hate it when people refer that to their God and their Bible, and they go, well, back then it was acceptable. But if their God is all-knowing and time doesn't matter to him, then wouldn't you think that he would try to steer people on the straight path right away?
Right. I mean, it would make them a shining example to the rest of the world, or would have. So I mean, it's very strange they wouldn't have done it, but I mean, works in mysterious ways, doesn't he? Hi, Fabio.
Hey guys.
It's great to see you.
Yeah, me too. I thought that this hangout would have been packed, but I think there is some other train wreck going on. So it's good to
probably
be,
about 20 minutes. But you should come in. It's like only Canadian so far.
No,
Trey was in here at the beginning. And he's like, oh, he's a pussy. But you should come in. Defend yourself. I don't know. Comments? You're exchanging comments with him? It's obvious to everyone you're a pussy. That's why he said it.
This is so funny. He has no idea.
Oh. All right.
Okay, now he muted himself. Thank God. Yeah. No, anyway, it's great to be in this sort of hangouts where there's some smart people, and Yeah, it was really interesting what you guys were talking about slavery. I think it's a really good point. The thing you, John, said before, why especially atheists are so interested in why slavery is wrong. To hear the answer from theists. I think it's a really good point. And my answer would be that the condemnation of slavery, regardless of why, it's something that it's an idea which has grown up in different parts of the society, and it's not something which can be said that it's owned exclusively by a religion. During I don't know how you call the French period after the revolution. It's called Illuminism around here. So the word is slipping me. But in the encyclopedia, the French said that slavery was wrong, and that was a secular movement. Even if Diderot said that the Negroes were inferior. But anyway, that's an idea which it seems to be that is progressed in all parts of society, and it's not a particular of a religious idea. So if we get to agree that slavery is wrong because, for example, I believe in some religions say, no, it's wrong because, God says it's wrong, how can you deny the fact that, that a secular society come to the same conclusion? So I think this is the interesting thing. I mean, from my point of view of the slavery topic.
Yeah. I'm having trouble placing that accent. Where are you from, Fabio? Newfoundland?
Are you kidding me? I mean, we've been in Hangouts before. I'm from Italy, but yeah.
Oh, no. Okay, I'm kicking you out. You are fucking booted.
You didn't hear Canadians only.
There were too many Canadians.
The Italian Newfie accent thing is very, very close. Very subtle difference.
Yeah. There were too many Canadians around here. There were some riots in the comments, too many Canadians. So I thought I would step in to bring down the average of smartness in the room, to dump the room down a little bit. So, yeah.
No, I think you make a good point about the sort of the convergence of that opinion with the secular community. I think some of the struggle we have, and not with Christians overall, but with the evangelicals, is their view that they make two mistakes. They think that their understanding of the kernel of their morality, their source of morality, that it's accurate and in any way justifiable or a useful notion. And second, they think it's the only possible, only conceivable notion. And anybody who doesn't sort of forge their moral views in the crucible of biblical inerrancy simply doesn't have a crucible in which to forge their morality. And that's a really hard thing to overcome conversationally when the other person is just, it would be like saying, if we worked at the same office and then, the guy in the cubicle beside you would say, well, I drive to work in my car, so I know you must, live here. You must never go home or come to and from work because you're not in my car when I drive to and from work. You don't have, obviously, if you're not in my car when I go to and from work, you must not have a way to go to and from work. And on top of you sitting there going, well, other people have cars. You said, wait a second, buddy, you take the bus. You don't even own a fucking car. Like, your argument makes no sense on so many levels. It's really hard to deal with.
No, you're right. I think there is the flow in all these kind of approaches that this is strictly my opinion, and I have no education on that at all. So I'm probably going to make an ass of myself. But I think the main flow is that we, and I say we because I think it's a cross-platform thing. It doesn't really matter if you believe or not. But we tend to define morals and morality as a set of rules. And this, from my experience, it's kind of flawed. It's wrong. I have no good definition for morals. Again, that's not. I have no formal education in that, so I won't pretend to have one. But I know there is a difference between moral and morality. For example, to me, morality is how much you live your life according to the morals that you have. It's like a percentage, you know what I mean? So the morals is something that you develop, depending on, the society you live in, the education you live in, the times you live in, the history you live, the culture you live in. It's something that I feel that it's It's part of me. It fits with me. It has a core component of in me that is probably, depending on the way I am, like a human being, it's probably has something to do with an evolutionary process. I have no idea, but it's not a set of laws. The moment we try to define moral, says, okay, I'm going to specify this is moral, this is not moral, this is moral behavior, this is not moral behavior, and I try to make a set of laws, I fail. There is no way around that. The Romans knew it really well, more than 2,000 years ago when they defined the laws. So in the Roman laws there is a motto which says summum ius, summa ignure. The best laws cause the most of the injustice, and I think that's the same with morals. They cannot be written down as a set of laws, and so I don't know. I'm ranting. So go ahead. I've dumped down the room enough.
We're not talking about Trey anymore.
We're switching back and forth. I mean, I like that. I just want to hit on that point, Fabio. Like, I think you're right. I mean, I think, and I wanted to hit on what HogTie said too. I think why we bring up these moral things or these moral aphorisms that are placed in the Bible is because we're worried about the development of good people, and that good moral people can maybe be created through the way that Christianity describes, right? Following the example,
yes,
or relying on what they believe is that deity that's described in the Bible, and his influence on their insides, on their empathetic responses to people, right? And so they sort of use that as their moral sense. And I think that if they are using the Bible that as it's described as we read it now, we see serious issues in the development of good people, right? I think that example is going to lead people astray from what we would consider good human beings here on Earth. And I think that is something that we really strive for, and I think that that's something that I would definitely want to address in people that I'm conversing with.
Mm-hmm.
I think it crosses the line of the what's the harm scenario. There's entertaining these religious thoughts as a philosophical exercise, and then there's people like Tommy Hall who doesn't think there's anything wrong with raping his wife. All of a sudden it cross that line into, holy shit, this book's fucking harmful. G-Man really thinks it's okay to own people. It crosses a line with me. I think that's why it's a bit of a hot button topic.
I know I'm probably in a minority here, but I don't think that the problem with people that believes things like that is actually in the Bible. The problem is in the people which think like that. Meaning that I don't think that those people are blank people and they just happen to pick the first book and it's the Bible and read it to believe it by the letter and then become ugly persons. I think that they might be ugly persons before taking the book, if you get what I mean.
Well, I'm sure they would agree with that. They at least the radical evangelicals will make the claim that they recognize in themselves that they're horrible people, and thank goodness they found the Bible. I hear stuff like that. It's frightening. Yeah. But even before venturing down, can I pick up on Chris's point there, because I want to challenge you a little bit on this thing. I mean, I agree with you if I understood your point correctly, because it's something I've wrestled with in my time doing this. Is the boy, it's really funny. Nephilim Free thinks that the water rushed out and blew into space and made craters on the moon, and what a moron. That's funny. And then you hear, oh no, it's okay for people to own people, and it isn't really rape, if she consented before, and that's in the Bible, and what, and all of a sudden it stops being funny and ventures into frightening, and the transition happens really quickly. But and just yes or no, real quick, Chris, was that a fair characterization of your point, that sometimes you feel this, like you have these holy shit moments, like that guy actually believes that, and that's a dangerous thing?
Yeah, I agree, but I was kind of relating it to when you asked earlier why we keep going to slavery. That's why it came up.
Okay. I guess what I'm wondering, and I don't mean to sort of bog it down on this point, but just for the moment, can we pause there before saying, well, it's frightening that they believe these things. Can we first challenge the factual nature of that claim? Do you think these guys really believe that? Like, do you think when you hear an evangelical Christian say, nope, there's nothing wrong with people owning people. Yeah, I'm opposed to the transatlantic slave trade, but only because they treated those people poorly, right? It's bad to whip people and to, rape their wives and stuff, whether you own those people or not. And I would agree with that, obviously. It isn't the issue, when women were getting raped and limbs cut off and stuff. Like, I mean, that's bad enough whether you own those people or not. But when you hear G-Man and Veckel and somebody else just came, Brett had said it in that hangout yesterday or a couple days ago, whenever it was, the same thing too. He says, oh no, I don't see anything wrong with it. Like some of these guys, and I don't mean Christians, I mean the radical evangelicals, will say, no, I don't really have a problem with that. And then these comments about, well, no, there's no such thing as rape inside a marriage. And do you think they actually believe that? And then I'll tag on an appendix question because this I think is less challenging. When they talk about how horrid homosexual behavior is, do you think that reflects something that's truly in what they've said?
Yeah, I don't want to be evasive, but I mean, I think some of them do and some of them don't, and most of the people that we've mentioned here, they're on a spectrum of, have cognitive difficulties, basically. Like, that's the reason that they're at the bottom of the barrel. So.
I think if they actually had to practice it, they would change their mind. If they actually saw it in real life, I think people say, oh, evolution's false, slavery's okay. Why? Because all that stuff happened in the past. It really doesn't apply to them. It really doesn't affect their everyday lives. So, it's easy to say, oh, yeah, I believe that. Oh, the Bible requires me to believe in this. I have to believe in this to go to heaven. Okay, yes, I'll say I believe in it. It doesn't impact my daily life, so I might as well just say, oh, yes, I agree with it, because that'll help me get a ticket into heaven. I think if they actually tried to put into practice or saw it in practice, they'd have a different minds. Now, those who actually do put it into practice, those are the ones you really have to worry about, like the ISIS folks. They literally follow what the Quran says. They're beheading people right now. It's amazing how you can take another human being and behead them.
I think the YouTube misfits that we see, I think they're kind of Christian crazy. I think if they were ranting and raving about anything else and acting that way about anything else, people would just think that they're crazy. But they're just strong Christians, so on they go.
I don't know. I'm turning 50 this year, and I used to believe that the world was fundamentally sane, and there was some patches of insanity which could talk through rationality and stuff like that. I'm quite sure that it's the opposite. I'm not really sure about that. So I think that there's some people which actually believe that kind of thing. And that's quite scary, but it's not scary because they're religious. It's scary because there are those people. It doesn't matter. There might be white supremacists. I don't care. That's the really scary part, and I don't think that's that kind of attitude can be talked through those people.
I've been actually kind of thinking. Someone asked John yesterday whether he thought humans were intrinsically good or evil, and I believe he said both. But I think that people are intrinsically good, but that our environment is kind of intrinsically evil. We want to help people around us as much as we can without sacrificing our own comfort and safety. But at the end of the day, we're all just trying to get through life, which is, it's kind of killing us.
Sorry, I pulled my headphones out. That was terribly rude, but I really wanted to jump on that point about ISIS, because that's exactly why I kind of bring this up. I have to admit, I wrestle with this. Okay, yes. I should be back now. This is why I'm so interested by this, because when you hear people that, I mean, like, you don't know ISIS, right? You don't live, you're not neighbors with those people. But
I am.
Oh, okay, yes.
They're quite close. They're saying that they want. I mean, the next step is Rome.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm more sensitive that Europeans are sort of have a different perspective on that situation. But I mean, you understand, like, where I wander to in the days when I'm not available on Google Plus, I go to places that the land looks like it looked 500 years ago. You know, there are no telephone poles, there are no roads. So I sometimes get a little self-centric and not recognize that other people are sort of looking at culture very differently than. But in any case, our worlds are extended by this weird electronic medium that is these computers all plugged together. And I have a neighbor. His name is G-Man. Right now, I mean, physically, he lives in New Jersey, which is on another planet as far as I'm concerned, because I don't visit there. But we're on Skype, we're on G+, you know, he and I talk. He's a good guy. Like, I know people like to complain about him and say awful things about him and whatnot, but it's because of his character that he does and the crazy shit he does in his thing, and he deserves a lot of criticism for some of the stuff that he does. But I'm telling you, if you lived in his neighborhood and you know, you need some good done by you, he'd be the guy to do it. And Veckel, same thing. And when I hear them say this crazy stuff, and I know that I live on a planet that, even though I don't see this myself because of where I am, I know that there are people who cut the heads off of other people, kill children, you know, do these things in the name of religion. How am I to sort of cope with that dissonance that here I'm talking to this guy who's a religious radical in the same way that those other guys are religious radicals over there? Of course, you know, radicalization within those religions tends to sort of be a bit of a different spectrum. But how do I try to deal with my belief that G-Man is actually a decent person who'd help his neighbor carry his groceries, and at the same time know that he has the same sort of thinking and mindset as, you know, had he been born in a different part of a world, then he would be doing ... And the only way I can reconcile that is to tell myself that when he says the crazy shit he says, that he doesn't actually believe it.
You seem to have assumed that G-Man's a decent person.
Well, it's inferred from, it's evidence-based, I'll say. It's not presuppositional. He tries. And the thing is, we through this medium, and I don't know, because I don't actually literally live next door to him, and I don't know how he treats his neighbors. He might be a total asshole in his community. I'm quite sure that when he grabs that bullhorn and he's standing there yelling at people, that he doesn't give half a fuck what anybody thinks about what he's saying. He gets, like every other bullhorn evangelical, is that he actually likes when people criticize him, because of, as I pointed out before, John chapter 15 tells them that, you know, well, you might be hated, or you could be hated, or you would be hated. They interpret that to mean you should be hated. If people aren't hating you, then you're doing it wrong. That's what they think Jesus said in John 15. So I know he's a dick when he does stuff like that. But honestly, Chris, like, I mean, like, I know we like to kind of bust chops here, but if we can just be serious for a moment, do you not think he's? I mean, do you see it differently than me? You've seen what he's like to people, and you've had off-air conversations with him, haven't you? Like,
yeah, I don't think he's a decent person. I mean, I think when people say he's a decent person, what they really mean is deep down he's human, or he can be decent at times. But, you know, by my definition of decency, I mean, no, I don't think he's a good guy.
Yeah. Well, I leave my mind open to that possibility too, because I know it does get to be difficult. Like when you interact with somebody, there's that that tendency, and it's part of human psychology, that rationalization effort, is that, well, why would I be talking with this guy if I didn't think he was a decent person? And I am talking with him, therefore I must think he's a decent person.
I mean, I don't think he's outright evil. I think he's very challenged, and you know, for whatever reasons, he ends up not being able to act like a decent person, in my opinion. So, you know, but I don't think he's quite a monster like Tommy Hall is a monster. But you know,
okay.
I don't give him that credit for being a decent person. I have a pretty high bar too. I mean, I don't.
Tommy Hall's an even better example. Everybody knows Tommy and I don't get along, but I don't know if people know that it's not related to anything with me not liking him, right? Like again, he's the kind of guy that I think he's a decent person in the community. I would never want Tommy Hall to babysit my kids, right? Because I think when I get back to the house with him as a babysitter, half my kids would be dead. And not because he's ill-intentioned and he wants to see harm come to my children, but because his view of the world is so disinterested in reality that he collects an understanding of how the world works around him that in a way that makes him dangerous. And I've never been able to explain that to him on air or off air.
Well, fuck those
vaccines. Thanks for joining us. Sorry, go ahead, Wolf.
No, I was just building on your example. Yeah, I mean he's a good guy, but yeah, all this talk about fuck vaccines, medicine that has never done nothing for anyone. Yeah, that's a bit dangerous.
Yeah, I don't know that he's a good guy. I've heard him say things like that he runs a business and he doesn't consider hiring women, and the latest about the raping the wife and his things that he says to transgendered and homosexual people. Like, I don't know why you guys think he's a good guy. I mean, maybe he wants to be a good guy, maybe he thinks he's a good guy, but I don't know. I don't see what he's doing that's good.
Well, I mean, I guess good in the sense that he tends to be more calm, in terms of the discussion. And sure, I mean, like some of the stuff he says might be derogatory towards certain people, but he's not he's not really vitriolic, not as much as like other fundamentalists in this community.
I mean, he's passive in saying disgusting things, but it doesn't make them any less disgusting.
Yeah, I think we're gonna.
Well, yeah, but that's when that's when you just humor it just for the hell of it. I don't even. I mean, I tend not to take it too seriously.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to scratch the surface on what we mean by somebody being a good person, because I think I was using it in terms of well-intentioned. I mean, there are people out there that are assholes and want to see harm come to other people. ISIS, for example, right? They want to see some good for some people, and they want to see some harm come to other people. And I wonder if my presupposition there is that the way I'm going to use when I say somebody's a good person, he's a good egg, I mean that he tries his best. I mean, there are people who try to do good things and they make mistakes, or they don't have the knowledge to do the right things. Yeah, so, when I say Tommy Hall might be a good person, he certainly isn't a good person to babysit my kids, for example. I'll say that again, because I truly believe that. I think he's just dangerous, but I don't think he's ill-intentioned. So I wonder if there's sort of a rubric.
The thing is, the way I tolerate people I don't like is I understand that no one wakes up in the morning and wants to be the biggest dick in the world or have everyone hate them. Everyone thinks that they're a good person, right? Everyone's trying. So it has to be in their behavior where we determine who's acting decently.
Yeah, sorry, and I think John was gonna say something, and hopefully illuminating, the point that I'm clearly sort of puzzling myself on, because I think Chris makes a good point. But let me say I do want to tag onto that, by the way. When I say that these guys are good people, I'm also going to qualify that there isn't an aspect to which they are assholes, and I'm just glad they don't live in my community, and that is their attitudes about people with different lifestyles, like gay people or whatever else. The fact that they think that they are good in their like, well, I don't want you guys to force vaccines on my kid, but it's all my business whether or not people who live in the other side of the state from me, are in love but happen to be the same sex, and they want to be able to be the beneficiary of each other's insurance policies. That is not a good person. That is not a well-intentioned person who somehow reasons themselves to thinking that it's their business that these other people shouldn't have these benefits. So that's definitely an important qualification where I agree with Chris 100%. But sorry, John, you were going to say something there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, both right that the motivation does seem to be important, right? When we're considering goodness, and I think you're right that Tommy Hall maybe doesn't necessarily intend to be so harmful in his beliefs and his stated professions. And I think there's the way I look at it, I mean, like, Chris has got to be right that, I mean, we can't infer the person's motivations directly. There's no way for us to really experience that, and so we're forced to take a cumulative review of their actions or professions or propositions, and look at them in a way as to try to at least deduce some sort of motivation that's going on. And I think when Chris is describing maybe Tommy as not being a good person, he's maybe describing the overall valuation of reality, or the the valuation of accuracy within the worldview or something along those lines, right? I mean, I think there's maybe something more base in his motivations that Chris is maybe inferring. That's not necessarily simply the motivation in each specific action, but maybe something underlying it.
I think for some of these evangelicals, it's simply a case of a culture war. They have their agenda, and they think those who don't agree with them have their agenda, and it's whoever wins, whoever's get enough candidates into the House of Representatives and the Senate will get their roles enforced, and then they'll win out. It's no different than Republicans versus Democrats. There's two opposing sides fighting it out for power.
Are we letting Americans in here now, HogTie? Is there a moderator here at all?
They're going to bring freedom, so yeah. But
I understand. What happened? Who is it?
There's an American in here.
Oh, if it's Floyd. Oh, yeah, no, it's Floyd. He's welcome. Although I'm told he's also a pussy. Oh, my kid. I got it.
I understand what you said before, HogTie, and I agree. I mean, I wouldn't want Tommy Hall to babysit my kids too. Although my youngest one is 18 years old, so he'd probably kick his ass. But for the very same reason, I wouldn't want Forbidden Fruit to be my babysitter, or George W. Bush. So what I mean is that it's how you behave. It's what you do. So for the very opposite, from the opposite side of the spectrum, what they believe, I wouldn't want those two people babysitting my kids, my children's, and for the very same reason, because I think their ideas are retarded, and I don't want my children to be exposed to those kind of ideas.
Like, aren't the decent Christians the ones that read it and say, oh, well, we're not going to enslave people or discriminate against homosexuals, right? Like, isn't that kind of where the line is? Decent people don't let their religion...
No, they were. I mean, in Spain, one of the first voices against slavery was in Spain in 1500. I can't remember, but you can, if you Google Juan Ginés de Sepúlveda or what was the other one, Bartolomé de las Casas. They were priests, and they were writing against slavery while Spain was colonizing the New World. So, yeah, it's what I'm trying to say is that I don't think that good ideas or good people can be labeled as such just because they believe or not believe in something. This is the core of what I think. Because it's a slippery slope. I think it's really dangerous to go with that attitude.
I think I would agree. I mean, whenever we judge someone based on simply a category, I think there's definitely an issue. But I think the difference might be that when we're talking about people who are very fundamentally attached to the Bible, there's an aspect of themselves that gets wrapped up in the identity that contains, right? And so the category itself becomes something that they are attempting to fulfill rather than something that we're fighting against, right? I think.
But
I take your point, yeah.
No, so I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I totally agree with you, and I think I said it before, and the question should be, is X person a bad person before he believed, or was he a bad person because of the culture he lived in, the lack of education and stuff like that? HogTie was talking about ISIS before. I think ISIS is a different example. I don't think it really fits, what we're talking about. The way I see it, and again, I mean, they're really close to my country, but less than 2 hours with a Zodiac, with a speedboat. So they're there, and they're saying they're coming to Rome next. So. But I think that's more a political and economic and cultural thing. I know it's hard to understand, but you really should go in those areas. Thus, some of those areas that they're living in the 16th and the 17th century, the 500, 600 less civilized than that the world we are all part of. And there is a void of power in those areas right now. ISIS was born as the bad branch of Al Qaeda. I mean, Al Qaeda said that they don't agree with ISIS because they're too bad. And I mean, if you live in an area of the world where Al Qaeda is the good guy, you see, I mean, there is a problem in that part of the world, in that culture, in that society, and again, the reason why the driving force seems to be, the religion, is that religion in the 16th century, in the 17th century, it's an easy escape, it's an easy shortcut for people which is not. Which haven't got a great culture. It's an easy message. It's something that, the goat keeper. It's easy to make him understand. Do that because you will get 72 virgins. He has never seen a virgin in his life. He doesn't even have an idea. So yeah, I mean that's a good deal.
I mean, I think you're. Oh, go ahead, Floyd, please.
I wonder how what some of these Christians would think if they actually lived. Or if they went to a time machine and went back to Martin Luther's Germany or John Calvin's Geneva and actually see what was going on there, would they condone, or the Catholic Crusades, would they actually condone that sort of thing, do they actually think Christianity that's being practiced in evangelical churches now, or were actually practiced, back in those days?
Sure. I think it's. I mean, because I think it's a valuable point, Fabio. What you raised there was, that it's sort of filling this void as far as a leadership role and a way of structuring a community in those areas. Right. It's very unstructured now, and using the word Islamic seems to give it some sort of universal appeal, an ability to appeal to even the lowest common denominator in that region. And I think that when we're talking about, Islamic State, I mean, we may be overstating the seriousness of their belief as they adopt, and as more people will become enfolded in this sort of fight, right? But I think that it is providing. I think the word Islamic may be providing an amount of cover there that seems to make it harder for those people in that situation to even question the authority of the government that's attempting to take over. And I think that's really the issue, right? That the religions seem to provide some sort of barrier to questioning by just enacting some sort of sacred or continuously consecrated system of government that seems to be held up by their social structure.
Yes, no, absolutely. And going with the example that Floyd was making, if you had a time machine and you took Pope Innocent III, or any other king at the time of the Crusades, and you bring it right here, they will tell you that probably Europe is too soft against ISIS, that they should go there and kill them all, which is the exact same thing that the guy in ISIS want to do in Europe. So again, I see that it's a cultural battle. It's cultural. I don't think that we should give those guys the excuse of religion, because that's not a good excuse. It will mean that we have to repudiate all the people, all the Islamic people which live in our society and they are integrated in our society. They want to be part of our society. They recognize the values of our society. And we shouldn't give them, that free pass. We shouldn't label all those people bad, because it means, refuting, the good people which are part of our society, regardless of what they believe. So this is something that I see it's really dangerous. On the other end, we must keep, looking for crazy people. And again, you guys made some names, Tommy Hall on one way, there's some other people, I'll go on and say, forbidden fruit is as a totally wrong idea. I wouldn't want to live next to that guy. as much as I don't want to live next to Tommy Hall or Rand Cam, because they're horrible persons, not because of what they believe. They're horrible persons.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but I think, I mean, isn't there the argument? I mean, that's beyond doubt, right? I mean, I think there are crazies in all self-selecting groups of people. It's just going to happen. And I think that, I mean, you're right about that, but doesn't the religion give someone like Tommy Hall or Rand Cam an easy excuse for acting that way and for continuing to act that way and still consider themselves a good person, right? Like, wouldn't they lose that excuse without the religion?
Yes, I mean, you're right, and I said it before regarding ISIS. You know, Islam for ISIS is a shortcut for those populations, and in the very same way that Christianity is a shortcut for people like G-Man or Tommy Hall. I totally agree with that, and I also agree that there must be different ways to approach those people. While you can talk about religion with Tommy Hall and G-Man and try to explain to them that some of the things that they believe are absolutely bonkers, not their faith. I don't think that being a man of faith means that you are stupid, But some of the things that they believe they're absolutely stupid. That's not the right approach to go with, a sniper in Tripoli right now. I mean, that would be a really good approach. So depending on where they live, depending on the society they live in, depending the cultural level of the society they live in, the approach must be different. But regardless, I think the only proper response has to be education. There is no, I don't see any other way around it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that. I mean, education, first of all, and I think, secondly, we need to think about the liberation of women in a lot of these countries, right? It seems to me that, half the population is not participating at all in the discourse, and, the better we can bring those people in, the easier time we're going to have spreading that education and ensuring that it is our messages of tolerance is spreading. So.
Yeah. Well, it seems to be we killed the room. Wow.
Nice. We can talk about Trey Jadlow now if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to actually talk about.
Hit it up, Floyd. I'm interested to hear what you had to say. Actually, we got kind of distracted there.
I was like pulling my hair out. The guy's amazing. He adds new attributes into terms. It's out of the blue. I think. HogTie, you brought up a good example. Why can't you have 2 necessary beings, or 3 necessary beings, or 1,000,000 necessary beings? And he says, oh, well, if you have 2 necessary beings and they have different attributes, one is contingent on the other. Well, why is that? We say you have 2 necessary beings, one's red and the other one's blue. Okay, how is the red being contingent on the blue being, or how is the blue being contingent on the red being? It doesn't make sense. And in Christianity, you have 3 necessary beings, right? You have I think HogTie may have froze. Can you guys hear me okay?
Hear you just fine.
Okay. In Christianity, you have 3 necessary beings, right? You have the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. So, does that contradict the law of non-contradiction? And he throws out these terms without explaining them. I was on a thread with him earlier this morning, and I said, well, why can't a necessary being change? Oh, the law of identity. Well, what about that? We change, right? Does our nature violate the law of identity, or violate the law of non-contradiction? I really question if you understand these terms or not. And again, why can't you have 1,000,000 necessary beings? Self-existent beings. To be self-existent means you're non-contingent. What does non-contingent mean? You didn't come from something else. that you weren't dependent on anything else to bring you about. So you could have a God that's self-existent. He was never created. He always existed, and so forth. But you can have a rock that's self-existent as well. This rock always existed, and so forth. And you could have three rocks that's always existed, and those three rocks could be identical. They could all share the same attributes, or they could all have different attributes. What difference does it make? As long as they're self-existent, they're self-existent.
Yeah, I did find, and hopefully, I was pointing that out, that he does seem to conflate that definition. He kept saying by definition, like by definition is the magic wand that means I'm right and you're wrong, and it's not. It's when you have set out that definition first, and then when somebody says, well, why does this have this property? You go, well, that's how we define that property. Like if you ask me, if I say, well, we know that 17 is a prime number, whatever, it has two factors, two natural factors. And so it was, well, how do you know that? Well, that's the definition. That's we know that prime numbers have that property because that's how we define that set, right? Mm-hmm. Let's not even have a discussion about whether or not one's a prime number, but anyway, yeah, he would seem to kind of slip that in, and I guess this is why I try to be as encouraging, to Floyd and Gary Edwards and Ozzy. Take on these guys when they want to do it, if they're civil and you think there's actually something productive that comes from it, because I have to admit, and it's always nice to hear people say, oh yeah, it's good, HogTie said this, but I'm also getting, he should have said this or whatever. This came out on the Magic Sandwich Show a while ago. Like I'm not into philosophy. I'm interested in it, but I'm a layman at it, and I find that when I can see the gaps in his argument, I find I'm not well enough equipped with the parlance of it that I can sort of generate that refutation on the spot. There are places I can do it, and I'll see, okay, well, here's a hole you can drive a truck through. But I know that I know just enough about philosophy to sort of to understand the layman's gaffes or the rookie mistakes. Like, for example, if somebody says, like, is this logical, right? So I have no money. I literally don't even have a penny. That's premise. Premise one, I have no money. Conclusion, therefore, I cannot buy a motorcycle. Right? Is that a sound argument? Right? And of course, if you ask anybody, is that logical? Well, of course that's logical. If you don't have money, you can't buy a motorcycle. That's perfectly logical. But of course, it's not. There is the unstated premise there that in order to buy a motorcycle, you need money, right? Oh, that sounds very upsetting. You get my point here, I'm hoping, because I'm going to have to go hunk some heads together here in a second. But you know what I mean? That they, a lot of his arguments have these unstated premises that I think feel good to them, feel very natural. And what we need are people who are quick-witted enough and sort of well-versed enough into hearing how people speak, and then able to take that and say, well, here's premise one of your argument, here's premise two, and then here's unstated premises 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then here's how your conclusion doesn't follow from that anyway.
Yeah, I assume I assume that he actually thinks he has good arguments. I just wonder if is this a communication problem? He just doesn't seem to communicate well, it seems. He uses like adjectives as nouns, for example. He'll say stuff like he said once, self-existence cannot communicate self-existence. Now, what the hell does that mean?
That drove me crazy. I listened to that one with Botten, and he kept saying it can't communicate it. And this is one thing I will pat myself on the back for, because I do know our language very well. I think in the structure of philosophy as an area of study, I will always say, oh, gee, I kind of wish I knew what Gary Edwards knew, for example. But anybody can say that about any field. I wish I knew more about auto mechanics. But the language, I can hear when people, I know, just 1 second, I'm talking to my friends, remember? When people are using words, when you hear a conversation and they're disagreeing about something, and then you realize, well, somebody's using this word this way and the other person's using it this way. So what does it mean, self-existent being cannot communicate self-existence? Does it not mean to parlay or convey or transfer that property onto something else? right? Like in the same way that somebody who knows karate can sort of communicate that skill, can grant it to someone else. That's a bad example because that also involves communication. But or does he mean description of the event? And that, when I listened to the one with Botten, I was just like, it's frustrating. You listen to Hangouts and you're always like, this is what I would say if I were there. Everybody does that. But you know what I mean? I think that example, Floyd, is exactly right on the money. Like when he kept saying this about communicating, I kept saying, well, a self-existent being can't communicate self-existence. Does that mean it cannot parlay it to another thing? Well, obviously not, because if he has to create its self-existence, it's not self-existing. Well, that made sense to me. But then he kept talking about analogical language. So then it sounded more to me like he was saying, well, who cares what it sounded more like to me? The point is he couldn't make himself clear on this point. And when unclear and when challenged on something, he'll then just start, out comes the squid ink, big cloud of defensive squid ink.
Yeah, if he's trying to say that self-existence cannot come from self-existence, he should simply word it as a self-existent being cannot create another self-existent being, because when you create something, that new being is contingent on the thing, on the being that made it. But he doesn't word it that way. I think he needs to write down all his definitions and then clearly define them, all his terms. Define self-existence, define contingent, define necessary. Define the law of identity because he doesn't use it properly. Define law of non-contradiction. Okay, now start talking, and when you start using those terms, okay, which form of a syllogism out what you just said and see if it makes sense. But it's like you have to stop him half sentence each time. To kind of,
yeah, you don't. I found that too. I kept saying, well, let's address this, and then it's like, okay, well, we're not getting anywhere with this. Let's just get to our point here. And I mean, in a way, it was nice having a time limit. I wish that the time limit would have been more like an hour 15 instead of 40 minutes, because it gives you a little more meat. But yeah, I think if you actually tried to, litigate your way through a conversation with one of these, what do you call it, apologists disguised as philosophers, it would just take hours to be so unrestrained. Floyd, and not insisting, but just can you help us with this? Because I had my spider sense was tingling when he was talking about the law of identity, either with Alex or with me, and I'm not sure these really got traction on what that is or how it's a useful concept. So now I sort of tweaked when you said that you felt he was using it incorrectly. Can you help lend some understanding to what you mean by that?
Well, I mean, the law of identity, simply put, is A equals A. Something is itself, okay, and not other self. So, Floyd is Floyd, HogTie is HogTie, rock is rock, okay. Now, Floyd can change over time, right? So when we talk about identity, you could say, I'm me at this time, at this specific point in time, and in this specific point in space. Okay, but every second we change, right? Our new cells are being produced. My hair's falling out. My old cells are falling, my nails are growing, and so forth. But at each instance, okay, I'm me. When he brings up things like, it's hard to even remember some of his sayings that he says. Like self-existence cannot change. I think he said once. Well,
yeah, that's an issue he clearly hasn't thought through. I don't know how. Oh, sorry, I think we're done.
Self-existence cannot change because that violates the law of identity. Well, how? How does it violate the law of identity?
Yeah, my understanding of
we change all the time. Do we violate the law of identity?
I saw you ask that. Okay, that's partly why I asked this too. I saw you ask him that in the comments, and I was just like, I'm not sure how that, like, whether he's getting what the question means or even whether I'm getting what that question means. I mean, my understanding of what a violation of the law of identity is is that it's not a violation if something has two names, for example, right? So, for example, the big male cat that you see sometimes jump on when I'm doing a show here, his name is Baron Theodorus von Bingenheimer. We call him Bingo for short, for obvious reasons. So to say that Bingo is Bingo, that's consistent with the law of identity. To say that Bingo is Baron Theodorus von Bingenheimer, that's not a violation of the law of the law of identity. But to say that Bingo is not Bingo would be a violation. Have I got the
right?
Okay, so yeah, a single object element can have two labels, but to say that it is that thing and also at the same time not that thing, that's the violation. Yeah, so if I understand you correctly, you're saying he keeps saying that if something changes, then it's not that thing anymore. If God changes, well then, gee, he wouldn't be God. Gee whiz willikers. And again, that's an unstated premise. And I know Alex really, well, this is Alex's big thing. He's really pushing him to say, explain this unchanging changer guy. I mean, is it an attribute of God that he created the world? Because if it is, he has that attribute now that he's created it, and he didn't before he created it. So he's changed.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I go along with Alex's argument there.
You don't have to.
You can have, I mean, you can have something that doesn't change but can act on other things. I guess I don't know. Alex is suggesting, well, if you act, then I don't know. You have different brain states. You have different thought states. So therefore, that's considered change, or perhaps that's what he's going at. But I don't know. The whole conversation just seemed very confused. And then Trey brought up with you, Anselm's ontological argument. It's like, oh well, the self-existent being has to have omni attributes. Well, where did that come from?
Yeah, that was a strange mishmash. I mentioned.
Yeah,
that, I mean,
he's just throwing, unconnected.
I guess
unconnected attributes, and arguments together. You could have, picture a. Picture a necessary being that created the universe. Okay, let's even call it a god. Let's call it Shanaraki's deist god. Okay, and this god is necessary, the necessary being that created the universe and everything. But this god, after he created the universe, dies. In fact, to actually create the universe, he has to sacrifice himself and kill himself to create the universe. And now the universe is on its own with its own physical laws and so forth. Now, it sounds like, according to Trey Jadlow, somehow that would violate the law of non-contradiction or the law of identity. Again, why? What's the argument? It just seems disconnected. You can have a self-existent being that's limited, or it can change, or picture a self-existent being that creates children, and those children then kill him. Okay, all these things are logical possibilities, and I don't see what the problem is with them. But according to Trey, these are all problems, and I don't see why they're problems.
Trey puts a lot of he'll oftentimes push towards this concept of coherence, and he seems to think that that's something that's lacking from his opponent's point of view. But I noticed that he oftentimes uses that concept of coherence as as equivalent to a lot of the arguments that he brings up. He mentioned that the law of non-contradiction is the same as rational coherence, and he seemed to use them interchangeably. And I was curious if you guys caught that at all.
Yeah, I mean, to be logical, to have a coherent argument, yeah, it has to be logically sound or logically valid, I should say. But one is kind of like a subset of the other. But yeah, he interchanges these things. He seems very confused. I guess I don't know if I need to buy some R.C. Sproul books to see if R.C. Sproul thinks this way, or if Trey's just confused himself. But R.C. Sproul, I believe, is a PhD. I don't know. I find it hard to believe, but you never know with evangelicals. I don't know.
Yeah. So on a quick housekeeping note here, so I initially advertised this broadcast as being for 2 hours, and of course nobody ever runs their Hangout for this exact length they say it's going to be. I am thinking of pulling the plug here in what would be 12 minutes, so that would be 4:30 Mountain Time, 6:30 in the East, and 11:30 p.m. UTC. So that gives us, let's say, another dozen minutes, and for the audience, for people who feel a little bit ripped off here because we've got some people talking about some interesting stuff. It's great to have this group of guys here that know this stuff and like talking about it, and I'm going to end up shutting them down. There are other Hangouts. If you've got a Hangout that you want to start soon, let me know, and I will. I'll pimp it on air for you and post a link so that people can either get on with their lives or get on with ignoring their lives by watching Google Hangouts. You guys going to protest? Do you want to stick around longer than that, or what do you think?
I honestly, I have no problems. I mean, it's half past midnight here, and I got to wait till 2 a.m. to see the races in Australia, so I'm game.
No, it's always fun. It's just it's a little difficult when you're hosting that you sort of also feel compelled to so I had to sort of come up and go do various things, and I don't mind letting it go. It's the other thing too is I also don't mind just walking away and letting it run for another hour. I'm just mindful of having 8-hour Hangouts on your channel because then nobody clicks on it.
No, I understand. We don't want to do that. It's bad. We see it's bad.
Yeah. So what would our next steps be then in terms of I mean, we sort of are dealing with sort of within the YouTube crowd. There's kind of two fronts, right? I mean, again this diminishing interest in discussing science, right? Like you still have true empiricism who is willing to talk about science issues, at least within biochemistry or molecular biology. But then he's also producing a lot of content that's along the lines of, isn't it a shame that atheists are such dicks to us, and they're lying, dishonest people. So he's sort of going down that route, following Nephilim Free's footsteps and just complaining about everything instead of just making better content. And then we're getting this groundswell of apologists disguised as philosophers. And so what's next for us? Like, are we gonna just press on and whack-a-mole them while they come up and try to understand their arguments as best we can?
Well, yeah, unfortunately you have to treat one argument at a time. I mean, that's all you can do. Just to, I guess, just to give an example, just to plug a debate that's coming up, I actually have a debate with Preferable Prophet next Friday night on the Deeper Than Dogma show. We're going to debate whether or not Jesus fulfilled biblical prophecy. So hopefully that'll be interesting, because we always hear that claim a lot, that a reason that people believe in Christianity is because of all the prophecies Jesus fulfilled. So I'm actually have that debate next Friday.
Had you seen that discussion? I wish I could. When I normally bring up a discussion, I wish I had the reference to hand so that I could share it, because I know what it says. People wanted to go see this. But G-Man and DPR Jones were in a hangout together, and DPR sort of give us your reasons kind of thing, and G-Man had mentioned, among other things, the fulfilled prophecy business, and DPR was give us an example of that. He said, well, there's over 2,000 fulfilled prophecies. Okay, well then that means you've got 2,000 examples to choose from. I asked you for one,
Yeah.
And G-Man, do you remember this? He went on example after example of like, well, the Bible predicts this is going to happen, and sure enough, it's going to happen. Okay, well, that's not an example of fulfilled prophecy. That's an example of you being ever so faithful in that prophecy is about to be fulfilled. But when they'll say that, oh, there's 2,000 of them. Like give us an example.
Yeah, actually, that's how I brought up the topic. I put a request to have this debate months ago, and it came about. I was actually in a hangout with G-Man we were actually G-Man and I were actually working together. We were debating Aaron, I forget his last name. He's a preterist. So we were debating preterism with him, and G-Man brought up that Jesus fulfilled all these prophecies, and I said, "Oh well, I disagree with you there. Do you want to have a debate about it?" And he never he never responded to me. So since then, I've been asking people to debate me. Right? Yeah, HogTie. Yeah, right. Volunteers.
Yeah.
And people, I've gone through like six different people so far, and I think I finally have Preferable Prophet to debate me next Friday. Hopefully it'll happen, but you never know.
I hope it does, and that's sort of why I raised the issue about sort of what the next steps are, because I think that's what we got to do, and I think I think in the YouTube Google Plus community, it's a big day for philosophy. Again, this is something I'm sort of reflecting back on that episode where Gary Edwards had called into the Magic Sandwich Show, and as I put it, he tuned us up. Like I of all the people who might wish to claim that they won the Magic Sandwich Show, I'm going to give that honor. In my time there, I'm going to say I think Gary Edwards was the only one who really showed up and sort of gave us something to think about. Like, but
can I ask you? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, if you hold that thought, don't lose it. But it's just that in my mind, a lot of this has been connected to creationism, because a lot of us who had sort of basic science training or training in biology or whatever else would get into this discussion because we'd watch some dumbass creationist thing, whether it's carbon dating or like. Who's that? The guy who did Tumbling Asteroids. Osmoroid. Man, that's a good channel. He doesn't talk much about biology, but then he got into that Tumbling Asteroid thing with Nephilim Free. That was such a good two-part video, Tumbling Asteroids, Osmoroid. It's worth looking up. So people interested in science in their various areas would see some dumbass creationist thing, and they would see how creationists have such a poor understanding of science, and they get enthused about it. And I'm one of those people who's drawn into it because of that. And now you sort of feel, I'm out of my comfort zone because we're talking about philosophy. But there's so much that I've learned additionally about science, and so much I've been able to bring to other people. Like science understanding has improved because the creationists are being dumbass out in public, and it gives us a platform to talk about these things. And now philosophy has that platform, because now people who are knowledgeable about philosophy get to watch apologists doing philosophy badly, and to get to come out and say things like, I was driving yesterday and I hear John F. McDropout in my ear saying the words fallacy of composition, and I actually understood what it meant. Like, how did my life get to this point? And it's because the philosophy thing has been, and he used it correctly, I understand. So. But it's because the philosophy. So Floyd, I do hope you whether that one jumps off or not. I mean, one of the things that happens, you get a lot of these debates that get scheduled and then they just don't jump off for whatever reason. You can say it's because the other person's scared or they're a pussy or whatever else, but you just got to take up the chances when they come, and I hope you guys keep doing it, because that gets your passion out there for other people.
Yeah, I mean, I like to have formal debates. I mean, it doesn't have to be real formal, but I like to have structured debates where at least someone can get information out, someone can educate the audience. In my debates, I do PowerPoint slides and I give a little presentation. So, regardless of who won the debate, information, whether it could be good or bad, was communicated.
Yeah, I think he's got to take a call there, and the last thing I was saying there kind of sounded like closing comments, because I'm inclined to wrap it up unless you guys have something else really profound. I will say, I mean, especially John and Floyd, like, because you guys have been doing more Hangouts and stuff, like, for people who aren't watching their stuff, like when they're in Hangouts, do you guys post when you're on Google Plus? Like, should people be following you on Google so that they know when, because I'll do that. I don't usually announce when I'm going into like G-Man's Hangout, because I never know I'm going to be kicked out in 2 minutes, right? No, we'll stick around for a minute. Prudent joined us. He's always got something interesting. But do you guys announce it? And if you do, I'd certainly be, happy to reshare that stuff, because you guys always bring good stuff to the table when you're going in.
Well, I'm a regular on the Deeper in Dogma show Friday nights. Besides that, I'm just on like the general Hangouts. Nadia always has Hangouts going 24/7 until she's back in the hospital.
I don't watch Nadia stuff. Deeper Than Dogma, never heard of it. I say that because I got a semi-snarky email from Xbox that he can't use. I can't believe you screwed up the name. Deeper Than Dogma is such a simple name, and I was in a Hangout and I ended up screwing up the name of it. So I apologize for that. And I have been following it like as time permits. I'm never available to watch it when it's actually broadcast live, but I do make a point of slapping the MP4 on my phone, and I do listen to it when I'm wandering my beautiful province.
That's Friday nights at 8 Eastern. There's Sock Account and Xbox are the hosts. I'm usually a regular. Ozzy has been a regular for quite a few of them. We had one last night on morality. You and Ozzy, I will say of that show, you and Ozzy make Xbox and Sokka not look so stupid. I'm not sure who that was. Mr. Prudent, what's on your mind today? What are you doing?
Oh, nothing much. Not at the moment, at least. Looks like I kind of came in on the tail end of the Hangout.
Of this one, or are you watching a different one, you mean?
I guess. I just kind of got back home.
Oh, she didn't even know what we're talking about. Okay.
I want to ask a question before. When you were talking about DPR Jones asking G-Man about the fulfilled prophecy, and I know it's the last minute question, so it's probably not fair to me. But if you want, you can develop it in a further hangout. Is there really any value in asking those kind of questions to people like G-Man? I mean, if you listen to people which believe in Nostradamus, they can probably point out that Nostradamus has a higher percentage, in fulfilled prophecy, but just because they believe in what he wrote and they interpret it in some really crazy way. So again, should it be a valid approach with people like G-Man in asking those kind of questions? I mean, do we really think that G-Man or Tommy Hall, those people will come out with something so astonishing that has never been written that we have to ask those questions?
I think I know where you're getting with that one, and initially as you're asking, I thought, I'm not sure how I'm going to answer that because it does seem kind of pointless. I think I do have an answer for that because it speaks to the intent of like why to ask a question like that. I think initially I started thinking about it in terms of strategic, right? Like a lot of the things that we do, like why do we engage these people? Why are we still talking to Nephilim free? Well, it's very strategic, right? It's to show. We know we're never going to convince Nephilim free, for example, right? There's a whole middle ground of people, though, who, if we can ask the right questions and get them to show, get G-Man and Veckel, like what a wonderful time we live in. We have black men during Black History Month that will come out and admit to being pro-slavery. They won't use the label pro-slavery for themselves, but they absolutely endorse slavery, except for the slavery that enslaved my people. Yeah. Like it's delightful for counter-apologetics. DPR is less sort of enthused about the strategy of counter-apologetics than you might think. I mean, he's the host and producer of Magic Sandwich Show since it started, so you'd think like, oh yeah, he's right in there. But that's not why he does it. He wants the general science discussion. Can you go upstairs, please? I'm just wrapping up here. He does it as a fact seeker and a fact finder. Remember, he's a lawyer. Oh, I got another note. Oh, okay. And put the okay, you saving that? Did you show this to Mom? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, make sure she gets it with her notes too, because. Okay. Okay. Good. Sorry, that was an urgent matter. Yes. A note has been passed to me. Is my point. DPR is a lawyer, and with the same passion, but with different tools and different mechanisms. Lawyers are enthused about the search for the truth, and they're interested in mechanisms that are able to dig at the truth. And I've seen, in the time that I've known DPR, I've seen him a number of times simply try to come to an understanding. So it's like when you think when there's a trial that goes on and you sort of you read the statement of claim and you just go, man, this just sounds crazy. Like, how does this person think they actually have a claim? The judge doesn't just look at it and go, this looks like a waste of my time, and throw it away. They say, okay, through which processes are we going to use to come to understand how that, and they give the person every benefit of the doubt. And knowing how lawyers act and watching how DPR, like, just sometimes he rolls out the red carpet for people. He's like, please, I want to understand your point. Let me grant that assumption. Let me ask you in this way. And then people say, well, I need to ask you a question. It's, oh, please, I invite you to ask me questions, right? It's not disingenuous. Okay, good. Oh, we got another one.
It's for Mom.
It's for Mom. We'll put it on Mom's pile then, because that's pretty important too. In spite of the interruptions, I hope you get my point. Is that I thought you were asking about a strategic point, but when he asks those questions, he's not at all being strategic. He wants the truth to come to light. So he's not. Also, keep in mind too, he's not expecting that somebody's going to come back and say, well, here's a prophecy that was fulfilled, and he's going to look and say, there it is. Now I know. Now I get it. That's absolutely true. What he's trying to come to understand is, why do you people believe what is so obvious to everybody else is just being a pile of crazy shit? And that's what he's trying to get at, is to give people the fairest chance they can to make themselves not look like lunatics. And the problem is he gets mixed up with people like me or Aaron, who give people the fairest chance they can to look crazy, right? Will do things, and Alex, that's his main game, is to do that. He had Scott Terry or whatever. Who's the guy that Alex had admit that he would stab a baby or rape a baby or something on his show?
Yeah, that was Scott Terry. That was
I called Alex like probably an hour after that happened. I called him up on Skype. I called him and I was like, where do you find these people? So that's the thing, is that some of us are interested in that approach where you want to get. See, I do both, right? I do sort of what DPR does, but I sort of like the Alex Botten gotcha thing too. But yeah, Alex gives people the opportunity to go ahead and sound crazy, whereas DPR gives people the fairest chance that he possibly can for them to not sound so crazy, and then he rubs his temples when they're done talking, and he just goes, you still sound crazy.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say that there's some other weird beliefs that Scott Terry holds. Like, he thinks that it's a good thing for husbands to regularly beat up their wives in order to keep them disciplined. I mean, that's a little messed up. I mean, he thinks that gays should be put to death. He is okay with slavery coming back. I mean, like, with someone like Scott Terry, it's like, where do you draw the line, honestly?
In a mental institution.
I don't know. I mean, like, when you actually, I remember like that interview he did with them. Like, for the first half hour, it seemed like it was a general back and forth, and then like later on, you just hear like how crazy and like warped his views are, and how there's no way any of the shit that he is saying could possibly work in society, or at least in a healthy society.
Well, this is what I'm getting at when I was saying before, that when ISIS does this, maybe I should use Scott Terry as an example, because I know there are people like that live in this world, and I tell you, when I leave the city and I go wander away out in the boonies in Alberta, I am so happy that I'm nowhere near them. You realize I can live my whole life and never cross paths with Scott Terry, and that makes me happy. But the problem is, I, by choice, as a grown-up, choose to have conversations with G-Man and with Veckel and with true empiricism. And wouldn't it be the oddest thing in the world for me to think the same thing I think of Scott Terry's character if I thought the same thing of G-Man? So I'm admitting to rationalizing. I'm admitting that maybe, Chris had raised this issue before, and he's saying, I don't think they're good people, and I'm admitting, well, maybe I give them more credit than's due because, how else do I have sensible interactions if I thought G-Man had the same attitude? So I convince myself that G-Man doesn't believe the stuff he says that comes out of his mouth because I'm, G-plus friended with a crazy person.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think it makes rational discourse with the person impossible if you are coming from the position that they are irrational or going to lie to you. I think once you've crossed that threshold and not given them the charity of that, just that that very simple thing of just telling them that, well, at least maybe they think they're being good. I think if you don't give them that, then what basis do you have to trust anything that you guys are discussing or talking about?
But then how weird is it that you don't get that same in return? Because that's the other thing that I've noticed has happened. Like, Side 10 Brukencake and I don't ever talk anymore, right? Because after our second conversation, he just admitted straight out that he thought I was lying about things I was saying. And I just went, buddy, it's the HogTieChamp. Like, whatever people think, they know I'm a nice guy, I'm polite, I'm honest. Like, what are you talking about? And I was so offended by him saying that. And then all of a sudden, I'm having that thinking. If I thought of another person what he claims to believe of me, I wouldn't want to talk to that person. So why do I want to do anything to do with Side 10 Brukencake? And then after that was when the big blow-up happened. He had that debate with Matt Dillahunty. And then they had that big blow-up about how he wouldn't have the photograph with the woman who helped set the thing up and everything else. And that's when all of a sudden hit me. It's not that he was saying that about me. They say that about all of us. That when we have conversations with a small subset of these people on that side of the fence, you have to remember they don't like you. I tell this to Fiona all the time. Fiona underestimates how much they find Catholics disgusting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're actually taught to think that way. They're actually taught to hold they actually have a name for this. Besides reprobate, another one is antithesis. We're the antithesis, and they just hold us in contempt. And imagine someone's walking around who believes 1 + 1 is 3, and that the Chinese discovered America, rather than Christopher Columbus or the Vikings or whatever. It's just completely irrational, unwarranted beliefs. Or imagine if I believed I was dead, for example. I'm saying right now I'm dead. Picture. Think. How would you think about me? You would think I'm insane, or I'm just uneducated or demented, or just out, just plain bizarre. That is how they view us, or at least some of these presuppositions.
Sure. I mean, it used to go by another name called demonization, right? I mean, it's a way for them to dismiss anything that even resembles a refutation of their argument, and it's an easy way to dismiss an entire category of people. And I think inferring that nefarious motivation to any interaction with us gives them the leeway to dismiss anything that we say.
Yeah, there is no neutral ground. There is no neutral ground. That's what they're taught.
No, you're right. The funniest line they pop up is when they say, "I don't do Bible study with unbelievers." Where did they come from? I don't want to do a Bible study. I just want to discuss your book. Is it a Bible study? I mean, what the hell? I want to understand how you get from point A to interpretation B, and what's in between. I don't want to do a Bible study. I mean, what the hell?
It's hilarious on so many levels because it's dodge, but it's such an obvious dodge, and yet they don't see how obvious it is to the rest of us. I don't do a Bible study. You're telling me you have a belief set, and known to us amongst your belief set is the imperative to spread the elements of that belief set. Not necessarily every detail, but certainly the elements. And when you start saying, well, can you explain this to me? Well, I heard from somebody, I read this in the Bible, like, how can you, I just want to come to understand your position.
Yeah.
And they can't, as they're told, sanctify their hearts and with good cheer and loving spirit, or sort of 1 Peter 3:15, give an answer that's sensible, give an answer for your hope when asked to explain it. So when you say, well, how can you be hopeful because your God does this and this and this? Well, I don't want to do a Bible study. I've only once trotted it out with when somebody asked me a question, one of those, what if man came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? Or show me proof that a dog gave birth to a non-dog. I've only once done it, but I've said, I'm sorry, I don't discuss evolution with non-believers.
No, you're right.
That would be funny.
I think I found a funnier line than that, some days ago. There was, I can't remember who the guy was, in Hangout, told to another guy, oh yeah, you don't understand the Bible because you don't believe. And again, I was thinking, okay, how did it work out for you? did you first believe and then you discovered the Bible? I mean, where did you beliefs came from, and how did they relate to the message? You see, but they're funny dodges. I love when they do that because it reminds me, if you ever been in a kindergarten and you're Thai, of course, you know what I'm talking about. It's like when small children, they start stomping their feet. They say, no, I don't like this. Taste it. I don't like this. How do you know if you don't taste it? I don't like it. Yeah, okay, fuck it.
Yeah, you're gonna hear that Friday night in my prophecy debate.
Okay.
Because that's what it's about. You have to believe that they are prophecies to actually claim they actually happened.
I don't care. The Quran's got all that beat.
Yeah.
The Quran says expressly in there that to the non-believers, the words of the Quran will be gibberish. They simply will not make sense. And you get into a discussion with somebody who's well versed Quranically. They will trot that out when you start saying, well, why does it say this? Why does it say that? Which I don't do very often because my knowledge of the Quran is not nearly what it should be to engage in those conversations. But yeah, they will throw that out. They'll say, oh, well, you're just proving the Quran true because the Quran says that if you don't believe the Quran, then the Quran will come across to you as gibberish.
Yeah, it's a very good set of confirmation bias. You look for like a very vague piece of information that could support your claim, but again, just because it's so vague, that's usually where the skeptics, will hammer down. It's like, well, hold on, this doesn't really explain anything, especially if you use the Quran example like that.
Yeah, and people who think like that, it's in all areas of their life. Like Nephilim Free has if he doesn't have it on his channel still, it might be on one of the mirror channels. Like a Nephilim Free channel is usually pretty good for keeping him up. But it's one called Missing Giants, where his proof for the Book of Genesis account of the Nephilim giants is that there are no bones of giants in museums today.
What the fuck?
Because remember, the theory is that the scientists are trying to separate you from Jesus, right? And Jesus' testament is tacked onto the Old Testament, which makes mention of the Nephilim. So scientists have to suppress any proof of the Nephilim, lest it might make people recognize that the Bible is actually a true account of something or other. So what you're arguing for here is that the Nephilim existed and that there's a worldwide conspiracy to prevent you from knowing about the Nephilim. And the nice thing about the observable fact that there are no bones of giants in the modern museums is because it proves both of those theories at the same time.
Oh, this is the weird thing I don't understand. Like, here would be a good refutation, I think, to it. I don't think even if it's like a big conspiracy, if any scientist or like any paleontologist or anthropologist, knew about the existence of these giants, don't you think there'd be one bad apple that would release it to the public so they can get their own fame? I mean, seriously, if any anthropologist came out forth with this information, they would be a household name overnight.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't tour the anthropology journals, but if they're anybody like the modern batch we have in doing research in psychology or in medicine or in health policy, there's always some loony backstabber, and that's probably 85% of those people who publish.
I don't get it. I mean, if there is a giant conspiracy, my only complaint is that I've got to know the name of the organization, because I am missing checks for about 4 or 5 years, because I've been involved in research for 4 or 5 years and never seen a check for those years. So they better pay me up fast. If I was part of a conspiracy, I want to get paid.
I know. I was saying the same thing about the anti-vax thing. It's surprising. Yeah. Like, I want to make up like anti-vax discussion bingo cards if I can ever debate an anti-vaxxer on any forum, or have one of them call into the Magic Sandwich Show. You cannot get those people to call that show. They're nuts. But at some point, and I noticed, like, if you're in a comment exchange with them, boop, 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 it'll be by the third comment. They will mention, they'll say Big Pharma, usually by the second comment, but they will mention that how much is Big Pharma paying you? Like, I cannot think of, ever since the Ebola vaccine debate, of course, now the measles thing has really taken us into the public eye. I didn't really look at that debate too much, until the Ebola thing. I started kind of getting interested in now with measles and mumps and whatnot. Like, it's got to be a big deal. But so I've been active on Google Plus and those sort of comment exchanges, and I cannot count how many times I've been told that I must be making all this money from Big Pharma. And if I'm working for Big Pharma, like, where was the Christmas party? Like, we would have a kick-ass Christmas party of all these people that are sitting at home in their pajamas, like, typing, "You don't have the right information about vaccines. They haven't put mercury in the which one doesn't have
party. Send me the checks, for fuck's sake. Well, I don't care about the Christmas party. You know?
Well, HogTie, how do we not know that you're really hiding all that money and you're going to save it for a much even bigger kick-ass party?
Oh, listen, okay, we can No. Okay, Prudent. I'll bite. It's okay for me. I've got no problems. I'll send you my bank statement. If you find that money, we split.
Yeah, no, like I said, I wonder if there is some area of research where they're making money off hiding everything.
Yeah, the Spectre is financing them.
Well, I've let it run a little longer than I'd expected because I have been waiting for some response from people. If they wanted to open a new Hangout, I'd be quite willing to to pimp it on here and post it in the comment section. But having received none, I think I'm going to give everyone a moment to give a final statement if you want. But I think we should wrap it up here. Prudent, you shouldn't even get a final statement. You didn't watch the show; you just came in.
All right. That's fine.
Go watch it, and then you can come back. I'm like G-Man now. Put yourself on mute and watch the Hangout while you're in the Hangout, and then you can talk. No.
Oh, God damn, that is hard.
Yeah, well, you also missed the part when Brett Keane was in here. I had to leave for a few minutes, and Brett Keane was I just gave him mod control. It's just easier that way. Has anybody got anything profound to say? I mean, I kind of said what I want to say. Praise for these guys that are doing the philosophy better than I am, and keep it up and whatnot.
Fight the good fight.
It's a fight. It's so entertaining. Yeah.
I appreciate that. We're getting a lot of kicks out of this and entertainment and stuff, but I think it is important to address these guys, and especially address these ideas at their the core, where they're just barely kind of developed and very kind of poorly placed. I think or put. I think guys like Trey sometimes get a little bit caught up in the intellectual gymnastics that he seems to be putting himself through. And I think he's maybe just mistaking that for some sort of intellectual argument. And I think it's important for us to at least get him to clarify it and try to address what we see as the problems with the way he's putting it. But other than that, I appreciated your conversation. It was awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I do like the comparison that we say intellectual gymnastics, we say mental gymnastics. We don't literally mean. Although one thing I find funny about this argumentation that comes up, we're picking on this guy too much, but when G-Man says, when he talks about the precept argument, which as I've said, it's not an argument, it's merely a position, it's a stance, right? There's no premises or logical flow or conclusion, it's just a position. But what's really funny is when you're in a hangout with them and then you start saying, oh, I'll use the precept on you. If you say that again, I'm going to precept you. Precept. Like, I'm sorry, it's not a wrestling move. It's not a kung fu hold.
Seamus came up with the Floyd defense, so I use the Floyd defense on him.
my Floyd defense. We got to make some Magic the Gathering type cards for Floyd defense.
Yeah, precept. Floyd defense.
Good one. This one's pink. I've received some urgent news in pink. I will have to go. So again, I think that was a lot of fun. It's again for my first hangout on my channel. It's a fun hangout with you guys, and I found very illuminating discussion once we got sort of in panel. Yes, you found it very illuminating too. So thanks to everybody, and if there's any other hangouts, I'll add them to the comment section later on. Otherwise, Magic Channel shows tomorrow. Have a good weekend. See everybody. Wait, bye.
That's the best promotion. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the best one.
Okay. See ya. Bye. Bye.